Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Neglected Naruto snaps during the chunin exams. Before I start, please support for more amazing content, and do consider subscribing to my channel and share this video with your friends. This is written by Gene010 and link in description and support writer. Let's start the video. Prologue. A dark mage's fate and a deal with the devil. Death. Such a simple word and yet such a powerful term. Some people would say that death is the end for every living being, while others would say that death is nothing but a new beginning, the start of a new adventure. But a few people will tell you that death is a release, a way to escape the sins and the pain that someone commits on you, or the pain that you have on mankind. One such person would have to be the man that right now is floating in a place that could only be described as a void of nothingness. After all, the only thing that could be seen was darkness. Going back to the man that was floating in this endless void, he's a young man with a face that could be considered handsome, with black short hair and black eyes with a small circle-shaped necklace around his neck. He wears high-collared black and tan robes with gold trim, along with a large, flowing white toga draped around his torso. For people that do not know who this man is, he would seem odd, but for those that do know him, his simple presence can cause panic in the heart of the bravest warriors. This is a man whose name would be recorded in history as one of the most powerful and evil beings in existence. This is the monster known as the Dark Lord Zeref. Is this place where my soul will finally rest? Was the thought going in Zeref's mind just before his mind went back to the memories of all the sins that he caused to the world, of all the pain his own creation caused, and how that same creation ended his sad life. Yendi, such a cursed existence, you might never forgive me, but I am truly sorry, Natsu, said the powerful mage softly before simply closing his eyes and accepting his fate of everlasting nothingness in the void where he's floating is. Would you like a chance to correct your sins, Zeref? Spoke a powerful voice that seemed to echo everywhere. Zeref's eyes opened fast in surprise. After all, he thought he was going to be in this void alone forever. Who are you? Asked Zeref, his voice dull, but with a slight amount of curiosity in it. I have had a lot of names, Dark Mage. Some see me as evil itself, while others believe I am a necessary force, but I am either. I'm what your kind would call a god. I am the Shinigami, once again spoke the ominous voice, making Zeref's eyes widen in surprise for just a second after finding out the identity of said voice. I see. Did you came here to punish my soul for the deeds of my creations and my own set of wrong acts? Spoke Zeref softly, already resigned to whatever punishment the god of death would give him. After all, he himself knew that he deserved every single punishment that this god could give him. That is the task that Kami gave me. However, it is not normal for me to pay special attention to anyone's soul, but for you, someone whose evil deeds brought the complete destruction of his own world, I was tasked to curse your soul and give you eternal punishment, spoke the Shinigami, his voice completely devoid of emotion. Zeref was more than ready for something like that, so the announcement didn't surprise him at all. But the next word of the Shinigami actually did. However, unlike my foolish sister who sees you as nothing but a mistake, I see someone that could be of use to me, said the god of death, making Zeref wonder what this god was talking about. Wasn't he going to be punished? What are you speaking about? I'm saying that there is a way for you to atone for your sins in a more useful way than by just punishing you, Zeref, said the Shinigami, waiting to see if the little human would accept his offer. There is? No, such a way cannot exist. My sins are too many and too big for me to redeem myself. Don't joke with me, Shinigami, said Zeref with a little of emotion actually surging in his voice. Anger. After all, he was thinking that this god of death was just joking with him just to postpone his punishment, so he could enjoy himself. Don't forget with whom you are speaking to, human. Do you think I would waste my precious time with you like this? I could just send your soul to eternal punishment and be done with you, but I find you too useful for that, so I'm making you a proposition. You can either accept your fate and suffer for all eternity for your deeds, or you can accept the task that I will give you so you can atone for your crimes, spoke the Shinigami, once again, actually hoping that the human would accept. After all, souls as interesting as his were not common. The Shinigami knew that by doing this he was disobeying an order from Kami herself, but he did not care. He was tired of letting everything happening by itself. But he also knew that he could not mess with the humans unless they called him, which rarely happened anyway, so he needed a proxy in the human world, one that could change things for him, and who better than one like Zeref, whose powers in his world were second to none. While the Shinigami was expecting an answer, Zeref could not stop himself from thinking about what the god of death had said. Was there really a way for Zeref to atone for his crimes? Suddenly a strange feeling made itself known in Zeref's heart. It was hope. Hope that there was really a way he could make amends for the countless of lives that his demons, Yendi, and that he himself had destroyed. Hope that he would be able to find forgiveness if he does what the Shinigami asked of him. What is your answer, human? Will you right your wrongs, or will you let your soul to be cursed forever? Asked the Shinigami one last time, expecting a positive answer from this little Dark Lord. If such a way is truly possible, then I'll do it. I'll do anything in my power. Even if I'm never forgiven for my acts, I still want to try and find peace with myself, spoke Zeref, this time his voice having more passion that he had never shown in his life. Suddenly the space around him turned completely cold, just as a ghostly creature began to form. Said creature was bigger than him, with long white hair and with a face that could only be described as demonic, and with a tanto between his fangs. It only took Zeref a second to identify the creature as the Shinigami himself. After all, he doubted that any other being could appear in this place. But just before he could say anything, the newly formed Shinigami said the words that would start a change that no one could predict. Very well, Zeref, destroyer of his own world, creator of End. Are you ready to change the strings of fate itself? The answer could not have been more obvious in Zeref's mind. Yes. Nosi. Kanohigaku no Sato. 9 years after the Kyuubi attack. 9 years have passed since that horrible night where the powerful Bijou known as the Kyuubi no Yoko attacked the village of Konoha, destroying it almost completely and killing a big part of its population. It was only thanks to the actions of the Yondaime Hokage, Minato Namikaze, that the beast was defeated. The Yondaime knew that killing a Bijou was almost impossible, so he did the only other thing that could defeat it. He sealed it in the body of a newborn child. The Yondaime, being the person he is, could not bring himself to ask any other family to sacrifice their children. So with a heavy heart he sealed the Bijou-tailed beast in his newborn triplets. The yin part of its chakra was sealed into his only daughter, Uzumaki Namikaze Mito. Meanwhile the yang part of the chakra was sealed in the youngest of the newborn triplets, Uzumaki Namikaze Menma. For such an incredible feat the Yondaime had to use the powerful Shiki Fujin, dead demon consuming seal, summoning the Shinigami himself, and asking him to split the Kyuubi in exchange for his own soul. Minato was more than ready to give his own life to protect the village he loves, knowing that his wife, Uzumaki Kushina, would have been able to take care of the children even without him. So imagine his surprise when the Shinigami just brushed him off, telling him that for this job, a payment of the soul was not needed. The user of the Hiraishin no Jutsu, Flying Thunder God technique, was more than happy to be able to live with his family, not knowing of the Shinigami's true intentions. That same day the Yondaime made the announcement that the village was saved thanks to his two children, Menma and Mito, since they were able to contain the chakra of the mighty beast. Minato told the whole village that his children were heroes and should not be treated as some sort of reincarnated Kyuubi. The village was fast to accept that. They had complete trust in the words of their precious Yondaime, and started calling Menma and Mito the saviors of Konoha. Now, 9 years after that tragedy, this day was not one full of sadness and grief, but one of joy and celebration. After all, not only was there a huge festival in honor of the defeat of the Kyuubi, but it was also the birthdays of the saviors of Konoha. Everywhere around the village people were celebrating, but the true party was at the Namikaze Uzumaki residence, where the young Mito and Menma, now 9 years of age, were having their birthday party. The house of the Namikaze Uzumaki clan was not as big as the other clan houses, but it was big enough to keep all the guests that showed up to the party. These guests were the heads of every important clan of the village along with the next heirs of said clans, and some important people to the family, such as Kakashi Hatake, Hiruzen Sarutobi, Jiraiya and Tsunade Senju of the Sannin. The party was going at full blast and everyone was having a good time, but the ones that were most happy were of course Menma and Mito. Menma Uzumaki Namikaze could only be described as a miniature version of Minato, with his spiky blonde hair and blue eyes, although his personality was more like that of his mother, Kushina Uzumaki. After all, it was hard for the boy to not pull a prank at someone when he could. In contrast to him, his sister, Mito Uzumaki Namikaze, is a carbon copy of her mother, with long red hair that reached to the middle of her back and violet eyes, although her personality was more like Minato, calm and collected. Alongside the two birthday kids was another little girl, this one looking like she was 6 or 7 years of age. She had red hair just like her sister, with the only difference being that hers was put into twin tails, and she has blue eyes, just like her father. This girl is no other than the fourth child of the Namikaze Uzumaki household, Natsumi Uzumaki Namikaze. The youngest redhead was nothing short of a bundle of joy, always having fun with her family and with a smile on her face all the time. Yes, if someone were to look at this scene they would think that they are the perfect family, but of course nothing is perfect. After all, nobody noticed that the third birthday boy was nowhere near the house. Nosi. Meanwhile, on the Hokage monument, while everyone else was having a great time, one small child had nothing but sadness and pain in his heart. This small kid had blonde spiky hair and sky blue eyes, with 3 whisker marks on each cheek, giving him a unique look. The blonde was wearing a black shirt with the symbol of his clan on the back, a red spiral, and white shorts. This boy was none other than the third Uzumaki Namikaze child, Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze. You might be asking why someone like him is here alone, and with so much sadness in his heart. Well, the answer to that is simple. Once again, just like every year, his family has forgotten about him, celebrating the birthday of his brother and sister but not his. Why? Why does this keep happening? Why did my family forget about my birthday again? Why do they never notice me? Do they hate me? Were the thoughts that the young blonde was having in his mind right now, some tears falling from his eyes just from thinking of his family hating him. Since he could remember, his family always treated him differently. While his brother and sister were always praised with almost anything they did by their parents, he barely got them to acknowledge him. They always ignore him, and while Menma and Mito had already started their ninja training, he has not. And every time he asked for it he would get the same answer from each of his parents: we must focus on training your sibling and controlling the Kyuubi's chakra, so we can't teach you. When his little sister was born he thought that he would finally have someone that would treat him like family, but sadly that did not happen. After all, Natsumi was able to use the Uzumaki chakra chains, something that only his mother could do, so his parents decided to start her training sooner. And now he was the only one that was excluded from the family training time. It was not only his mother and father that ignored him, his siblings were even worse. Menma was always a brat to him, telling him how weak he was and that his parents loved him more. His sister Mito would always be cold towards him. She started being like that 2 years ago, and now she barely speaks to him, and when she does, it is only just a few words. His little sister, Natsumi, was more annoying than anything, always bragging to him about every cool thing that she learned with their mother or father, and acting like a spoiled child. It was not only his family that had forgotten him, but the village as a whole has forgotten that he was too a part of that family. Some of the more stupid villagers treated him like he was the QB reincarnated because of his whisker marks. Naruto was so focused in his thoughts about his family that he did not register the sounds of someone walking towards him until someone spoke to him in a soft and emotionless voice. "What are you doing here, kid?" spoke the person, making Naruto jump in surprise, not expecting anyone here at this hour. When he looked at the man, the first thing that came to mind was that his clothes were weird, and that his hair and eyes made him look like an Uchiha. It took some seconds for Naruto to actually register the question in his mind, but when he did, he answered with a voice full of sadness. I have nowhere else to be. Naruto did not know why he was answering, but he just felt that this weird-looking man was not going to harm him, unlike some of the villagers that sometimes hit him. "Don't you have a family that's waiting for you?" "It's late after all," asked the man softly, his black eyes focused on the child and nothing else. Of course he already knew the answer, having watched the boy interact with his family for a while, but he wanted to kid himself to respond, just to see exactly how much pain he had in his heart. "I do have a family, but they don't care about me, they never have. They even forget about my birthday every year. No one cares about me," said Naruto, his voice full of hurt, and his eyes had some tears, showing the man that he was right. The pain caused by his family was too much for the young kid, and now it was his time to act. "I see no one should have to live like that, especially a child like you," said the man before putting his hand on the boy's head, making said kid look at him with a face now with more surprise than sadness. But before Naruto could ask him anything, the man spoke again. "Tell me, Naruto-kun," said Blonde was even more surprised about this man actually knowing him. "Would you like to change your life?" asked the man softly, his black eyes looking directly into Naruto's blue ones. Naruto felt like this man was staring directly into his soul. What are you talking about?" asked Naruto, his voice full of doubt, but for some reason he found himself not afraid of this man, like he knew that this man was not going to harm him in any way. "I'm asking you if you would like to change, Naruto-kun. Would you like to be strong enough to never feel so weak in your life? Would you like to have someone that would care for you so that you would never have to be alone, Naruto-kun?" These words made Naruto look at the man like he was insane, but you could still see a little glint of hope in those blue eyes. "I can change like that?" asked Naruto, looking at the black-haired man like he has all the answers in the world. "Of course you can, Naruto-kun, we can always change, but that path is never easy. I'm asking you again, Naruto-kun, do you want to stay like this, being treated like nothing from your family and like a monster by this village, or would you like to become something more?" asked the man, knowing that the next word that the young blonde would say will be crucial. Meanwhile, Naruto's mind was racing. This man right here was offering him a chance to never feel so weak and alone again, while a part of him was telling him that you can't trust in someone you barely know, and that if he stayed with his family then they would change. Another bigger part wanted nothing more but to accept this man's offer. So it was with that mentality that the young Uzumaki Namikaze answered, "I want to change. I want to show my family that I can be strong too, that I'm not useless. I want to prove myself that I can become someone," spoke Naruto, his voice overflowing with conviction, causing the man to get a little smile, before his face returned to his neutral look, fast enough that Naruto was not able to see it. "Very well then, from now on I'll teach you everything I know, but it's only up to you if you learn it," spoke the man just before crouching and putting a hand on the floor. Naruto looked at him weirdly for that, but he was too happy to finally have someone that would teach him how to be strong to really care. But one thought stopped him right in his tracks. "Wait, sensei. I don't know your name," said Naruto, just remembering now that his new sensei never introduced himself. "I'm sorry, I forgot. I have had many names and titles, Naruto-kun, but you can just call me." Just as the man was about to say his name, a strange black circle appeared under both Naruto and the man. Naruto would have freaked out, but he was too surprised for that. After all, he had never heard of any jutsu like this. But his attention went from the circle to the man just before he muttered the name that would always stay in his memory, Zerif, and with that they disappeared in a black flash. Chapter 1. What it means to learn from a dark mage. Konohagaku no Sato. 11 years after the Kyuubi attack. If someone were to tell anyone in Konoha that in a hidden part of the Hokage monument existed a magical circle that, when activated with magic, would send you to a secret training area that not even the Hokage know about, they would probably believe that the person was going crazy, and that things like magic did not exist. Sadly for them, such a place does exist. Said place was big, but really simple, with nothing but walls of stone, and a big magical circle that covered the whole floor of the room. The room was illuminated by torches embedded in each wall, since no sunlight reached this training room. Right now, there were only 2 people in this room. They were the same people that had been training here for 2 years already. One of the figures was a tall man with dark black hair and even darker black eyes, wearing clothes that other people would consider weird. This man is known as Zirif, and right now he is watching the other figure that had spent a really big part of the last 2 years in this same training room. Said figure was definitely male, with spiky blonde hair with 2 bangs framing his face, with deep blue eyes and whisker marks in each cheek. This boy was wearing something simple in comparison with his sensei, a simple long-sleeve black shirt that had a symbol on his back that looked like the head of a dragon in silver color. He was also wearing black cargo pants and blue ninja sandals. He was tall for a boy of his age, and he had an athletic body born out of the training he had been doing for the last 2 years. This boy's name was none other than Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, first son of Minato Namikaze and Kushina Uzumaki and of course, apprentice of the Dark Lord Zirif. Right now Naruto was crouching and breathing hard. His clothes has some holes here and there, and he was sweating like there was no tomorrow. This was the normal state that the young blonde had every time he spared with his sensei. Meanwhile Zirif looked completely perfect, as if nothing had happened, showing the abysmal difference in skill these two had. "Are you ready to take a break, Naruto-kun?" asked softly Zirif, his voice still emotionless as ever. The dark mage already knew the answer to this question tough. After all, his apprentice was the type that would train until his body could no longer move. "No, I can still go on, sensei," said Naruto between breaths while slowly getting up, ready to keep sparring with his sensei. However, in his opinion, this was more like a one-sided beatdown since he could never land a hit on his sensei, and in one of those rare times when he did, Zirif would just brush him off like nothing happened. "If you say so," said Zirif, just before moving at a speed too fast for Naruto to see and kneeing him in the stomach, making the young blonde fall again with his hand clutching his stomach, while trying to get some air in his lungs. "You should know when to rest already. Even though your dedication is admirable, sometimes it becomes more stupid than anything," said Zirif bluntly, getting a groan of annoyance from Naruto. The dark mage went back to the center of the field and started meditating while his apprentice rolled on his back, his body full of pain, and that last hit did not help at all. "It has been 2 years already and yet you still refuse to rest when I tell you you're too stubborn for your own good," said Zirif once again, making his apprentice's attention go from the ceiling to him. "That's right, it has been 2 years since I met him," thought Naruto, remembering that fateful day in which Zirif accepted his as apprentice. That thought made Naruto smile, remembering his first day of training with Zirif and the revelation that he was what people in his world called a mage. Yes, that was definitely a day he would never forget. 2 years ago, the day after the QB festival, Naruto woke up with a groan, feeling like yesterday was the best birthday he ever had, which was probably because he had finally met someone that actually cared for him, and was giving him a chance to become strong. That thought made Naruto jump out of bed as fast as someone of his age could, and start looking around the place he was, which was obviously not his bedroom. This room was really quite simple, having just a bed, a desk, a closet and 2 doors, one of which led him to a bathroom. The young blonde got out of the room and ended up in a long hallway that was illuminated by some torches. This is really creepy, thought Naruto, wondering if his new sensei really lived in this weird place. After a few seconds of walking, Naruto ended up in a really big room, also illuminated by torches, and with a weird-looking circle covering the floor completely. However, before the young Uzumaki could say anything, a voice he was really happy to hear sounded behind him. "It seems you're finally awake, Naruto-kun. Good, there are some things I need to tell you before we start doing anything," said Zirif with his normal emotionless voice, making Naruto wonder what was he going to tell him. He just really hoped that training with this man was a good idea. After all, Zirif was still a stranger to him, but he just felt like he could trust him, so with shaky steps he followed his new sensei to the center of the big room. Zirif just took a seat on the floor and started meditating while Naruto just stood there waiting something to be said. After some really awkward minutes, Naruto decided to break the ice himself. "So Zirif-sensei, when are you going to teach me how to be a ninja?" asked the young blonde, a little more energetic, excited by the prospect of becoming a strong ninja. However, that dream was basically crushed by Zirif's next words. "I'm not going to teach you how to be a ninja, Naruto-kun," Zirif said softly, opening his eyes to see his new apprentice's reaction. And just like he guessed, Naruto's reactions was priceless. His eyes were huge, while his mouth opened and closed, but no words came out of it. It was only after a minute that the young blonde was able to calm himself enough to be able to speak, although his voice came out like a squeak. What do you mean by that, sensei? You told me you were going to teach me everything you know. Or was that nothing but a lie?" Naruto all but yelled, pointing at Zirif with his index finger like he had caught him red-handed doing something bad. The dark mage could only sigh at his apprentice's reaction, although he supposed it was normal for a young boy to yell like that when upset about something. It did not mean he had to like it. "Yes, I told you that I would teach you everything I know, but I never said that I would teach you how to be a ninja, did I? But what are you going to teach me then?" Naruto once again yelled, although Zirif's answer sure shut him up. "I'm going to teach you magic," answered Zirif bluntly, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. Complete silence. Whatever Naruto was going to say died in his throat thanks to Zirif's words. For a moment neither sensei nor student said anything, just looking at the other without even blinking. But of course, it was the young blonde that had to break the ice again. Was that supposed to be a joke? Because if it was a really bad one, sensei, deadpan Naruto, looking at his new teacher like he had lost his mind. Zirif could only sigh again at this reaction. But he supposed that again it was considered normal, so he would just have to prove what he was talking about. Perhaps a little demonstration is needed, said Zirif just before extending his arm and opening his palm, and before Naruto could even say anything again about his sensei mental status. A little ball black as night appeared in Zirif's hand. Naruto was completely amazed by that, and then he was even more surprised when Zirif threw the black ball to one of the walls. As soon as the black mass of magic impacted with the wall, a big explosion that rocked everything occurred, lifting a lot of smoke from the impacted wall. When the smoke cleared itself, Naruto could see that the wall had a big hole right at the middle and big cracks all around the wall itself. What kind of jutsu was that? Asked Naruto, thinking that the spell had to be some sort of strange just that his sensei had created. That was not a jutsu, Naruto-kun. It was magic, answered Zirif, preparing himself to answer the many questions that Naruto was going to have. But that's impossible. Magic is not real. I mean, it can't be, right? Refuted Naruto, sounding a little doubtful at the end. Zirif sighed one again and motioned Naruto to sit at the floor. This might take a while, Naruto-kun, but I will explain everything to you. And explain he did. Zirif told Naruto everything, from how he was from another world and was brought here to redeem himself to how magic worked in his world. Meanwhile, Naruto was giving Zirif his full attention, sometimes asking a question or making comments about certain things. Even though Zirif didn't want to lie to his new apprentice, he decided to not tell him about his world's destruction by the hands of his own creation, at least not for now. Fearing a little bit the reaction that the young boy may have and that he might ended up fearing magic, or worse, Zirif himself. By the end of the tale, Zirif had to admit that he was impressed by Naruto's understanding. Not only he understood everything Zirif said, but he also made some pretty deep comments about magic itself. After the whole explanation was told, Zirif just stood there, waiting to see if Naruto was going to ask anything else, which of course the blonde did after thinking for a few seconds. But sensei, how am I going to learn magic when I don't have a magic container in my body? Naruto asked, still thinking about everything Zirif had just said. He had to admit that his new sensei's story sounded really crazy, but since he did demonstrated some magic while explaining, he really had no other choice but to believe it. Although that did not mean that the young blonde did not have any more questions. What did his sensei do in his old world that was so bad for him to want to redeem himself? And how exactly was he sent to this world? Naruto really wanted some of those questions answered, but he decided not to ask, thinking that his sensei was not ready to tell him that, so he would wait as much as he could for those answers. You're correct, Naruto-kun. People in this world can never learn how to use magic since they don't have a magic container filled with magical power. Just like I can't use any jutsu since I don't have any chakra in me. There is also the fact that this world doesn't have ether nano, which is necessary to be able to refill a mage's magic container after using magic, Zirif answered, not worrying at all about this problem since he had already a plan for Naruto to use magic, although it might take a while for that to work. But then how am I going to learn it if I can't use it? And if there is no ether nano in this world, then how are you refilling your magical container, sensei? Asked Naruto once again. Don't worry about that, Naruto-kun. I promise that when the time is right you will be able to use magic. Just leave it to me. And about your second question, I have found that there exists a third type of chakra in this world that comes from nature itself. And after a lot of trial and error I was able to use said natural energy to refill my magic container by meditating, Zirif answered, thinking about some of the most weirdest things that happened when he was experimenting with natural energy. Those were days that the Dark Lord was going to take to his grave. Then what are you going to teach me now? We'll start first by training your body, mind and spirit, Naruto-kun. Let me remind you, Naruto-kun, that once we start there is no going back, understood? Zirif said, just before the big magical circle that was on the floor flashed with energy, illuminating the whole room with purple light. Naruto watched the circle, surprised, but then his gaze went to his sensei's eyes, knowing that this man was analyzing him completely, seeing if he was going to doubt or second-guess his decision. But the young blonde had already decided that he was going to become strong. It did not matter if he learned magic instead of jutsu, so that he could prove everyone, and more important himself, that he was not useless, and that he could be strong even without his family's help. So it was with nothing but determination in his eyes that the young soon-to-be mage answered his sensei's question. Yes, and thus the training began. Remembering that day made Naruto start thinking about the training regime that his sensei had created especially for him, starting with every day after breakfast, which Naruto always ate alone in his bedroom before his family woke up. He would run to the Hokage monument where Zirif would be waiting for him to activate the magical circle and teleport them both his secret training room. There they would simply start training. From Mondays to Wednesday they would do nothing but physical training, which had not only given Naruto a top-notch physical condition, but also made sure that his reflexes and pain tolerance were just as good. To make things harder, Naruto's clothes had a spell that would make them feel a lot heavier than they really were while he was on the training room, and he was not allowed to take them off while he was here. Now on Thursday and Fridays it would be nothing but combat training, in which Zirif would teach him his own combat style along with other styles that he knew just to see which style suited Naruto better. And after that the two of them would spar, meaning Zirif would kick Naruto's ass like there would be no tomorrow, while the blonde complained about how unfair that was. Zirif may have not liked to fight with his fists, but that did not mean he wasn't a master at hand-to-hand combat, something that Naruto's bruised body could testify to. The last day of training, Saturday, was the most calm of them all, since the only thing that they did was play games like shogi, or Zirif would give his apprentice different warlike scenarios in which he had to find the best strategy to win. After that the both of them would sit and meditate, something that Naruto was not very good at the beginning, and every time he moved or made a sound Zirif would smack him in the head, something that got a lot of curses in return from his apprentice. Sundays would be Naruto's free day in which Zirif told him he could do anything, but he could not come to the training room that day, so Naruto normally spent it doing chakra exercises in some empty training ground. Since Zirif told him that just because he would be learning magic it did not mean he should forget about jutsus completely, since being able to use both was an advantage that Naruto should not throw away. So Naruto spent a good part of his free day doing chakra control exercises and practicing some of the most easy jutsus like the Kawarimi no Jutsu, body replacement technique, Bunshin no Jutsu, clone technique, and Henji no Jutsu, transformation technique, that he had read about in some scrolls that Zirif had given to him. Naruto had to admit that he was a little skeptic at the beginning about using magic, since he did not have a magic container like his sensei, but those fears were whipped away by what Zirif did to him just a year after beginning his training. That was the day he became a mage after all. 1 year ago, a room hidden in the hills, training facility for Zirif. The young blonde known as Naruto was walking the hallway that led it to the training room, wondering about what his sensei wanted. After all, his sensei has never asked him to come on a Sunday, not once since they started training, so whatever is that he wanted it was probably going to be big. The young apprentice finally reached the training room, and just as always his sensei was sitting in the middle, meditating. Naruto always wondered if Zirif did something else besides meditating and training him, since those are the only things he has seen the man doing ever since the two of them had met. Just as Naruto stepped in the room he could feel the increased weight of his clothes. But at this point it didn't really bother him though, which means they are going to become heavier soon, thought Naruto with a knowing sigh, already anticipating that what it would feel like when that happened. The young blonde approached his sensei and then he sat down, waiting for whatever Zirif was going to tell him. Said dark mage opened his eyes and once again looked at his blonde apprentice eyes, but for Naruto it felt he was staring into his soul, just like when the two of them met. After a few seconds of just staring it was Zirif who was the first to talk, surprising Naruto. He normally initiated conversations. Do you remember what I told you when you asked me about how you were going to use magic? Asked Zirif softly, getting a nod of acceptance from Naruto. Well, I believe that you are finally ready, Naruto-kun, so after this day you're going to be able to use magic like me, revealed Zirif, getting a surprised expression from Naruto, who was trying to compute what his sensei just told him in his brain. Really? But how? Asked Naruto, hoping that this was not some kind of joke that his sensei was pulling off, although he had never seen Zirif telling a joke, or even laugh for that matter, but as they said, there were first times for everything. I have created what you could call an artificial magical container, Naruto-kun. It took me a while but I was successful in the end. Today I'm going to be fusing my creation with your body, making sure that your chakra network does not get damaged in the process. That was one of the reasons for why your training so far has been heavily physical, since if I had done this a year ago, statistically speaking, you would be dead or had your chakra network decimated, and thus heavily damaging your body. Zirif told him calmly, knowing that what he was about to do today could easily go wrong if it was not done with the best of his abilities. How did you create something like that? Besides, even if it works, the problem about filling that magical container with Aetherano still exists, said Naruto a lot more calmly than he truly felt. But it was thanks to Zirif's teachings that he was able to control his emotions. Zirif had told him that it was an important part of the training, since magic was heavily based upon one's emotions and that if he didn't learn how to not let his emotions run wild, magical accidents could easily happen. I created it by using the Kurowagai Jutsu, black arts, the epitome of dark magic. I won't tell you the specifics for creating it since the Kurowagai Jutsu, black arts, is one of the most powerful and obscure type of magic that exists, and someone as young as you should not know about them, Zirif said, his emotionless voice hardening a little bit when talking about that type of dark magic, getting Naruto to flinch a little bit. I'm sorry, Naruto-kun, but that type of magic is something that no one should have ever learnt, yet I did. And it has brought me nothing but despair since then. This is truly the first time I have made something with that magic that doesn't bring regret to my heart, Zirif said softly, getting Naruto to calm down again, wondering about how powerful was that type of magic if even his sensei felt like that towards it. Now about your second question, it's true that, in theory, even if I put a magical container in your body it won't be able to fill itself since there is no Aetherano in this world. I was able to fix that, however. When I fuse the magical container with your body I'm going to alter your chakra network so that it fuels your magical container. And since this magical container is a creation of my own, I made so that it will turn the chakra it gets into Aetherano, making you able to use magic, Zirif said, making his apprentice's eyes to go wide in surprise and awe at his sensei's abilities to create something like that. Now lay on your back. This procedure is going to be long and hard, and it's probably going to make you feel pain like none other than you have felt, said Zirif while walking to the far end of the room where a little box resided. Naruto did as told, and just as soon as he did that, black chains appeared from the ground and tied themselves around each one of his limbs, making Naruto completely unable to move. What the hell is this, sensei? Yelled Naruto, trying to move his arms and legs, but the chains were too tight for that, so he just ended up flopping around on his torso. I can't have you moving around while I do this, Naruto-kun, or something might go wrong. Like I just told you, this is going to hurt you a lot, but it's the only way, said Zeref, an actual frown appearing on his face, knowing that he was about to put his apprentice in a pain like no other. But sadly for both of them, mostly for Naruto, there was just no other way for this to work. Zeref opened the wooden box he had on his hand and took out what it looked like a simple glass sphere with an arcane symbol on the side of it. Suddenly the magical circle in the floor activated once again. Naruto would have been more than nervous if it wasn't for the fact that the man doing this was the only person he actually trusted. So he knew that even though it was going to hurt, Zeref was doing it for his sake. So it was with a brave face Naruto and a completely concentrated Zeref that the ritual began. Naruto would always remember that day not only as the one where he gained the ability to use magic, but also the day he felt the most pain he had ever known in his life. The ritual had taken almost all day, and thanks to the pain Naruto had passed out at the middle of it. By the end of it, Zeref was even panting, the procedure taking a toll on his magical abilities. Naruto had never felt as tired as the day after that. He could not even walk straight because his whole body felt weak. Zeref had told him that it was his body getting used to it, and that his chakra was going to be low until his magic container got fueled completely, and that the training for the next week was cancelled and that he should just stay at home and rest, something that Naruto had not even the strength to complain about. But all of that was more than worth it, since now Naruto was able to use magic just like a mage born in his sensei's world. Sadly for him, however, Zeref had not taught him any real spell and had just taught him how to feel and release his magic. The reason for this was that Naruto's body was too unstable after the operation, so Zeref had to wait for his chakra network and magical container to stabilize before teaching anything to Naruto, so for the time being the training stayed the same, with lessons about releasing his own magic added in some days. What's on your mind, Naruto-kun? Asked Zeref, breaking Naruto from his thoughts about the past. Nothing, just thinking about everything that you taught me these past 2 years. I know you want to learn spells already, Naruto-kun. But don't worry, your patience will be rewarded when the time comes, said Zeref, knowing that subject was always on the said blonde's mind. Yeah, I know, it does not mean I have to like it though, Naruto mumbled, trying his best to imitate his sensei's emotionless voice and of course failing. The two of them brooded in silence, one of them meditating and the other one just relaxing for a few minutes until Zeref decided to bring an end to the day. You should go home already, Naruto-kun, it's getting late, Zeref told him, and he wasn't ignorant of the annoyance in his pupil's eyes. I already told you, sensei, it doesn't matter if I'm late or not. No one is waiting for me anyway, the young Uzumaki replied in a cold and detached tone, which was always present every time the subject of his family was brought up. Even after 2 years his relationship with his family stayed the same, with him being always ignored by his parents, and his siblings treating him as if he was garbage. In the last 2 years all the pain and sadness that he had harbored in his heart slowly morphed into anger, and a little self-pity. After all, what kind of parent forgets about their child? And what kind of brothers and sisters makes you feel like you're less than dirt? I know how you feel about your family, Naruto-kun. But you should not let hate fill your heart, or you'll end up on a path that will bring you nothing but death and despair. Zeref warned wisely, knowing perfectly about how hate could transform anyone into a monster. Naruto only nodded and got up wordlessly to leave, as he could use magic now, so he could activate the magic circle in the Hokage monument, and the one in his room here. But before he could go into a hallway and towards his bedroom, Zeref had some more parting words that would affect Naruto's future years heavily. Someone once told me that family is not just some people who you're related by blood or by a last name. That family are those people that you would gladly protect with your life. And that is the path to true power, through those bonds, said Zeref, remembering about the words that a certain short blonde guild master had told him. Naruto just nodded once again without even looking back and started walking again towards his bedroom, where the magical circle was, Zeref's words resonating in his mind. The moon was already high in the sky by the time Naruto got to the house his family resided in. He refused to call this place home. There was nothing here that even remotely called or comforted him, to the point that Zeref's training room seemed more like a home than this place. As soon as Naruto walked into the house, he was greeted by the sound of his family eating happily. Then, against his better judgment, and because of his curiosity, he decided to just take a quick look, and what he saw brought pain to his heart. His family was eating joyously, both Kushina and Minato listening patiently to the numerous things Menma, Mito, and Natsumi had done that day. Naruto's heart twisted at seeing how happy they were without him. There was not even a chair for him and the dining table, not that he expected there to be one. Naruto consoled himself, but it still hurt to know that the supposed family that should love you and guide you in life had forgotten completely about your existence. So it was with a heavy heart that Naruto entered his room, once again his sadness transforming into anger. But he crushed that feeling as fast as it appeared, remembering the words of wisdom that his sensei had imparted onto him. Why do I still care? Wondered Naruto in his mind, convincing himself that his family was never going to pay attention to or love him. It was at that moment that Zeref's last words of the day flashed in his mind, and he found himself accepting them wholeheartedly. After all, what kind of family neglects one of his members to the point that his most trusted person in the world is an emotionless mage from another dimension? I'm tired of this. If they don't want to be a family to me, then I won't beg for them to accept me. If they think they will be happier without me, then I'm not going to get in their way. I'm tired of waiting for them to treat me like a son, like a brother. They're not my family anymore. No, they never were my family to begin with. My only family is Zeref. He's the only one that cares about me. He's more like a father than Minato has ever even come close to being Naruto. And for the first time in a while he felt relieved, as if a heavy weight he had been carrying around had finally been lifted off his shoulders. So it was with a clear mind and a determined heart that the young blonde drifted to sleep, thinking about the days to come. Meanwhile, downstairs, the rest of the Namikaze Uzumaki clan were still eating and talking happily, as if nothing was wrong in the world, not knowing that they had just pushed a member of the family over the edge of perhaps no return. It would take some years for them to finally realize what they did, but for them it was already too late. The Namikaze Uzumaki family was already broken, and in Naruto's heart, he knew there was no way anyone could fix it. Chapter 2. The one that rules over lightning. It was a known fact that if you wanted to live a long life in a place such as the elemental nations, you needed to know how to read a person. After all, in a world where ninjas were a part of daily life, the ability to know if someone was acting weird, unnatural, lying, or purely acting was a necessity. One person that considers himself a master of the art of reading people was none other than Zeref himself. After all, he was more than 400 years old, and when you live that long you tend to pick up those kinds of skill. So it was not really hard for said dark mage to pick up his student's changes. Although considering that Zeref had been watching young Naruto since he was a baby, he believed that any change in Naruto's behavior would never escape his attention. Normally, every time he gave his apprentice a break from training, Zeref would find Naruto either in his room here or in the training area, just lying there and looking at the ceiling with a lost gaze that for some people held nothing. But Zeref could see the different emotions that his apprentice experienced every time his mind wandered: hurt, betrayal, sadness, anger, and sometimes pure rage. So Zeref had quickly come with the conclusion that every time that happened it was because the young blonde was thinking of his biological family, and how they treated him. During the 2 years of training, Zeref had made sure that his apprentice knew that, even though feeling anger was normal, one should never let hate to control one's heart and actions, since that would lead to nothing but a dark path that it was best to never walk. And that if Naruto wanted to talk to someone about anything, Zeref was more than willing to hear about his apprentice's problems, something that brought a little of calm to Naruto's heart. But Zeref could still see all the sad feeling his apprentice held in his eyes every time he thought about his family. So it was really obvious for Zeref to notice the sudden change in behavior of his apprentice. After all, instead of the sad gaze Naruto always had, this time he was laying there with his eyes closed and a little smile on his face, making Zeref wonder what had happened with his apprentice after ending the training yesterday. "It seems you have found something to be happy about, Naruto-kun. Care to share what it is?" asked Zeref with a raised eyebrow, getting the young blonde attention, who just smiled some more to his emotionless sensei before starting to explain the resolution he had gotten yesterday. After hearing Naruto's explanation, Zeref could not have been more proud of his apprentice at that point. After all, he had not let hate to control him, even though he had every right to despise his family and wish them the worst. "So, what do you think, sensei?" asked Naruto, wondering what Zeref's thoughts about what he decided yesterday were. "I believe that you have showed more maturity than a lot of people in this world, Naruto-kun. You have not let hate to fill your heart and revenge to fill your mind, and for that I'm truly proud of you for that," said Zeref, a little smile, almost impossible to see, appearing on his face, causing Naruto to look away from his sensei look, feeling a little embarrassed after getting such a praise from the only person whose opinion mattered to him. "I thought that I would be saying this in a month, but you have not only surprised me today, but also proved me that you're more than ready in both mind and spirit for it. So tomorrow, Naruto-kun, you're going to learn your first style of magic," said Zeref, his smile widening just a little bit at seeing the happy expression his student got after hearing the news. Meanwhile, Naruto was more than excited about the prospect of finally learning a style of magic. He was so happy that he could not contain jumping of joy, and that he started muttering about all the kind of magic he could learn. However, his celebration was cut short by a powerful kick aimed to his head. The young blonde was barely able to dodge the kick by jumping backwards, increasing the distance between him and the kicker, which of course was none other than Zeref himself. "That does not mean the training for today is cancelled though, so don't go lowering your guard like that," said Zeref, his normal emotionless expression once again in full display, getting a swift nod from his student, who still had a smile on his face. After all, in his opinion, this day was already one of his favorites, and he knew tomorrow was going to be even better since he would finally be able to use magic properly. It was just after a few hours of training that Zeref had called the day off, telling Naruto to go and rest in his house since he needed to prepare some things for tomorrow, and he didn't want Naruto to hang around while he prepared everything. So it was for that reason that you could find the young blonde walking towards the house he lived in even though the sun was high in the sky, his mind wondering about what type of magic he was going to be learning. Of course, the most logical choice would be dark magic, but he knew that he probably wasn't ready for such a dangerous type of magic, so he could only guess what Zeref had in mind for him to learn tomorrow. While walking, Naruto could feel some of the villagers' glares that were directed in his way, and he didn't have to think hardly to know the reason for those glares. It's incredible how hate can truly blind someone. Just because I have whisker mark in my cheeks does not mean I'm some sort of demon. But I guess some people are just stupid like that, thought Naruto, annoyed by these people who had decided to concentrate the hate they felt toward the Kyuubi on him. He of course knew that he was not the Kyuubi reincarnated, and when he asked Zeref about his whisker marks he told him that it was probably a side effect of being in his mother's womb while she was the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi at the time, and that any person that blamed him for the deeds of the Kyuubi was nothing but a simple-minded fool whose hate would forever poison his heart. Going back to Naruto, the young blonde had finally left the commercial district and entered the clan district of the village. Just like its name indicated, this was the general area where the clan's houses resided. The bigger ones had to be both the Hyuga and the Uchiha clan, since they had a district of their own. It only took a few minutes for Naruto to reach the Namikaze Uzumaki clan's compound. Even though it was called like that, in reality the place was just a normal 2-story house, not overly big but not small neither. Naruto entered the front yard, noticing that like always the security seals at the house didn't activate by his presence. Probably because of his blood or something like that. Naruto couldn't really know since he hadn't enough information about Fuinjutsu, seal techniques, to know how the seals worked in the house, although he guessed that they were probably really complex since they were created by 2 masters of the art. Naruto reached the door and unlocked it, wondering if there was someone in the house at this hour. He guessed that Minato must be working, so he's probably at the Hokage Tower, but he was at loss about what the other members of this family do at this hour, although he supposed that they were probably training with Kushina in the backyard. As soon as the young blonde entered the house he continued walking straight to the second floor of the house to reach his room there. He didn't have anything to do, so he was just going to meditate for a while and after that read some books that he has, or maybe just sleep. "Where were you?" asked a soft, yet cold voice that made Naruto stop in his tracks completely and turn around so that he could get a good look at the living room and of course, at the person that just spoke to him. Said individual was without a doubt female, with long red hair that reached to her middle back and framed her face. She has a cute heart-shaped face with violet eyes that right now were focused on Naruto's own blue eyes. This girl was wearing a simple white shirt that had the symbol of Konoha on its front. She was also wearing ANBU pants that she normally used for training and some blue sandals. The girl was sitting in the couch, a scroll lying in her lap, probably something that she was reading before our blonde hero entered the house. This girl was of course none other than Uzumaki Namikaze Mido, first daughter of Namikaze Minato and Uzumaki Kushina and of course holder of the yang part of the Kyuubi's chakra. Now Naruto was getting better at controlling his emotions, but he was not even close to the level of control his sensei has. So it was no surprise that the young blonde got a surprised expression on his face after seeing who has asked about his whereabouts. After all, he could not even remember the last time he talked to his sister, let alone any time she started the conversation herself. Of course his sister was not always like that towards him. No, all of that started when they were 7 and she suddenly started to ignore him. She never talked to him unless she really needed to, and she always acted like he was not there. Before that started she was actually really nice to him, she would play with him, and even defended him whenever Menma insulted him. It really hurt Naruto to see how the one family member that treated him like a real family suddenly turned into a cold girl that didn't give a crap about him, and he always wondered why she had changed her attitude towards him so much. The young apprentice of Zeref had to take a few seconds to shake the surprise out of his face before answering the lie his sensei had told him to say if anyone ever asked about where he was at this time. Something that had never happened though. "I was at the library," answered Naruto, doing his best to keep his face neutral and to not let anger get in his voice. This answer got nothing but a nod of acceptance from his sister, just before she went back to reading her scroll. Since, in Naruto's opinion, the conversation was over, the young blonde continued his path towards his room, not seeing that, until he got out of sight, his sister's eyes were watching him with a lot of intensity. Of course he also missed when her eyes turned from her cold one to one that showed her real emotions towards her brother, ones of sadness and regret. It was at the next day that you could find an excited Naruto, and an emotionless Zeref who was holding a wooden box similar to the one that had his magical container, standing in the middle of the magical circle that extended itself in the floor of the training room. "So, what am I going to learn, sensei?" asked Naruto, looking at the wooden box in Zeref's hand with a look that had both interest and a little bit of fear. After all, he remembered very well what happened last time something was taken out of that box. Without saying anything, Zeref just opened the small box and took out what it had inside, which happened to be a crystal sphere that was the size of Zeref's hand. This sphere was quite peculiar though, since it was completely blue on the inside but it had a yellow thing on its center that looked like a spark. Another thing was that at one side of the sphere was a symbol that looked exactly like the one Naruto had on the back of his shirt, the head of a silver dragon. "Can you tell me what this is, Naruto-kun?" asked Zeref, testing if his lessons about the magical world had stayed in his apprentice's mind. Naruto looked at the glass sphere a little bit, thinking about all the things Zeref had told him about his world since this thing was obviously magical. "It's a lacrima," said Naruto in awe, remembering the lessons about these little balls of magic that people used for different reasons. "Indeed, this is a special kind of lacrima though. This what you could call a dragon lacrima," confirmed Zeref, making his apprentice look at the sphere in awe just before his brain kicked in and managed to figure what his sensei had planned. "Does this mean that the style I'm going to learn is Metsuria Meiho, Dragon Slayer magic?" asked Naruto in complete astonishment. After all types of magic there is, and his sensei was going to teach him such a powerful lost magic. Yes, Naruto-kun, I decided that before teaching you my own style of magic you need to learn something different, and since the advantages of this type of magic can't be denied, I decided that it would be a good style for you to learn, answered Zeref in a matter-of-a-fact kind of tone. Now, as you already know, Naruto-kun, a dragon lacrima, after being infused in a mage's body, allows him or her to use Metsuria Meiho, dragon slayer magic, just like if they had been training with a real dragon. That's what we are going to be doing today, fuse this lacrima with your body, turning you into a second-generation dragon slayer, continued Zeref, waiting to see if his apprentice had any question before continuing. Incredible, I'm going to be a dragon slayer, muttered Naruto, looking at the crystal ball like it was a deity, which it probably was to him. Sensei, what kind of element does that lacrima holds? Asked the young blonde, more than curious about everything related to the sphere that will allow him use such a powerful magic. This lacrima holds the element of lightning, Naruto-kun, which means you're going to be learning Kaminari no Metsuria Meiho, lightning dragon slayer magic, said Zeref, although he still had another thing to say before fusing the sphere with his apprentice. Before we start the fusing process, Naruto-kun, there is something else you should know. This lacrima holds something else besides the magic of a dragon. It also holds a soul, Naruto-kun, the soul of a dragon, revealed Zeref, shocking his apprentice to the core. What? But how's that possible, Zeref-sensei? Asked Naruto, not understanding at all how something like that was possible. After all, even if you found a way to seal the soul of a dragon in a lacrima, there still was the fact about founding the soul itself. After all, there were no dragon in the elemental nations, right? You must understand something, Naruto-kun. Dragons are beings whose strength is second to none. With that amount of power, traveling between worlds is not such a hard task. At least it wasn't when they were many of them. From what I can understand, 5 different dragons, each one holding the power of a different element, came to this world a long time ago during the Civil Dragon War in my world. The reason for that was to make sure that their race did not disappear in case the Civil War ended badly. During my travels I ended up finding one of them, Raijin, the lightning dragon king of this world. I asked him if there was any way for him to lend me a part of his magic, but sadly he said no, so I had no choice but to challenge him to a duel, knowing that a real dragon would never refuse such a thing. Of course, if I won he would lend me his power, but if I lost he would kill me. I managed to win the fight, although it wasn't an easy one, but I managed to defeat him. After that he told me in his dying moments that he wanted to know the person who would use his magic, so to honor that request I fused his soul with the lacrima that holds his powers. Do you understand now, Naruto-kun? Said Zeref, remembering his meeting with the mighty beast that was Raijin. It was thanks to him that Zeref got the information about the other 4 dragons, but he hasn't been able to find any of them yet. Meanwhile, Naruto was repeating the tale that his sensei had just said in his mind in both shock and awe. Shocked that there really are dragons in the elemental nations, and awe because his sensei managed to defeat one, which, if what he know about dragons is true, which should be since it was Zeref himself the one that told him about them, then his sensei must truly be one of the strongest person in the elemental nations right now. Is the soul inside the lacrima going to affect the process, sensei? Asked Naruto after thinking about everything his sensei just told him, wanting to know exactly what was going to happen when the orb of crystal and him fused. Yes and no, Naruto-kun, I can assure you that the process itself won't be a danger to you, even with the soul in the lacrima, but I can also tell you that you will probably have to meet with Raijin himself. After all, that was the reason that I placed his soul in lacrima in the first place, answered Zeref, wondering how the meeting between his apprentice and the mighty dragon was going to be. Of course, after hearing that, Naruto got a little nervous since he would be meeting a dragon of all beings. But he didn't have anything to lose at this point, so it was like that the young blonde asked his sensei to start the procedure. Very well then, and don't worry, this is not going to be as painful as the last time we did something like this, assured Zeref just before the magic circle once again sprang into life. Naruto just laid there in his back, watching how his sensei brought the sphere of power close to his chest and another hand to his forehead. That was the last thing the young blonde saw before he passed out completely. His last thought was in how this time there was no pain. Naruto woke up with one hell of a headache, feeling the rocks that were in the floor too annoying for his like. Wait, rocks? That thought made Naruto jump out in surprise and start looking at his surroundings, and it only took a look for him to realize that this place was not the training room he was just a second ago. This place looked like a freaking wasteland. The ground was full of little rocks, and you could see some dead trees here and there, and if you looked up you could see the white moon in a completely black sky, with not even one star up there. Not knowing what to do, the young soon-to-be Dragon Slayer decided to just walk and see if there was any clue of where he was. After all, the last thing he remembered was being in the training room while Zeref started fusing the dragon lacrima with his body. After a few minutes of walking, Naruto was getting more annoyed than anything. Why? Simple, he could swear he had passed the same damn tree like 5 times already, and that was making him a little mad. By the 6th time the young blonde was more than ready to punch the stupid street, just to see if his training had paid off. However, before Naruto could have his righteous revenge upon the unfortunate dead tree, he was stopped by something that sounded like wings flapping, and when the young blonde turned around he saw something big enough that his shadow covered Naruto completely just before the strange being landed a few meters away from the blonde, lifting some dust that was easily swept away by another flapping of the mighty creature's wings. Now Naruto had a good look of the creature, and he was more than awed by the magnificence of this being. Said being was now standing proudly in front of Naruto, its 4 paws holding its massive body easily. This being was huge, easily as tall as the Kyuubi himself or even a little taller, not that Naruto knew that though. It had a reptilian body that was grayish-blue in color, and its mouth was slightly open, showing a set of sharp teeth that would destroy everything that they touched. Its eyes were completely yellow and on top of its head were a set of yellow spines that reached to the end of its neck, and after that you could see a big patch of white hair that covered the majority of this being upper body. At the end of each of his 4 paws were powerful black claws that looked as deadly as the fangs it had in its mouth. At its back you could see its 2 great wings completely extended, and at the end of its body you could find a big tail that also had a little bit of white hair, and that ended up in a yellow point that looked like a trident. The young blonde could not even move because of the presence of this thing. Naruto could even feel the power it had, and he has to say, he was more scared he had ever been in his life. The creature's head went down until it was at the same level with Naruto, and the young blonde could feel its eyes examining him, studying him, seeing if he was worth of something, which he hoped he was. After a few minutes of nothing happening, the young blonde was more than surprised when it was this being the one that talked first, his powerful voice resonating everywhere. "So you are the human who'll use my power," said the powerful creature, making Naruto's awed and scared face go to one of confusion, until his mind kicked in, remembering who he was supposed to meet, and by just looking at the creature in front of him it was not a hard job to figure out who he was. "You are Raijin, the Dragon King of Lightning," said Naruto, trying his best to keep all of his fear out of both his voice and expression. "Correct, little human. My name is Raijin and that is my title, although I guess I should say it was my title since I'm already dead after all," confirmed the powerful dragon. "Do you hate my sensei for killing you?" asked Naruto out the blue, and he kicked himself mentally for allowing his curiosity to get the better of him. After all, he didn't want to upset someone that could eat him. "If you mean Zeref, then no, there is no reason for me to hate him. It was me the one that accepted his challenge after all. My dead, it's my own fault for losing to a human. Not to the human that bested me, although I'm both surprised and happy to see that he accepted my dying request," said Raijin, making Naruto release an air he didn't know he was holding, completely relieved that this dragon didn't hold any grudges toward his sensei. "He told me that your last wish was for you to meet the one who will use your magic," said Naruto, a little more calm this time. "Indeed, I wanted to know the one that would continue using my powers even after my death," the dragon confirmed, his head then coking to the side a little bit. "What is your name, little human?" "My name is Naruto." "Nice to meet you, Raijin-san," answered the young blonde with a friendly smile on his face, getting a more predatory smile from Raijin, or at least that what it was in the young blonde's opinion. "Naruto ahm, so my power is going to be passed to a little fish cake, what a waste," joked Raijin, making Naruto to get a tick mark and his eyes to twitch a little bit. "It means maelstrom, not fish cake," said Naruto, now feeling more annoyance than fear from this dragon king. "Whatever you say, little fish cake," said Raijin, getting a growl from Naruto, although that just made the great dragon to release a booming laugh that caught Naruto off guard. "You should relax more, little human. You're too stiff for my like, but I guess you'll do well. After all, I can't sense any strong negative emotion coming from you. And if you're being trained by Zeref himself, then yes, I'm sure you'll do more than well with my powers," said Raijin, a little more serious at the end, getting a happy expression from Naruto that transformed into one of surprise really fast. "Wait, you can sense my emotions?" asked the shocked Naruto, not knowing that dragons could do that at all. "Of course I can, human. That is an old art we dragon know, but even that cannot tell me everything, so I want to know, what will you do once you have learned everything about my powers?" asked Raijin, his yellow eyes looking into Naruto's own blue, wanting to see if the young blonde would tell the truth or not. In reality, Raijin already knew about Naruto's life and resolutions. He knew it since the moment the dragon lacrima fused with the young blonde, but he wanted to hear it from said human's mouth. Meanwhile, Naruto was thinking about this question hard in his mind. What was his objective? Was it to get strong? But for what? What could he do with power? He knew he didn't want it to show it to his family, since at this point he could not care less about what they think of him. Was it to protect the village? No, that was not it. He does not owe the village of Konoha anything, so why? The answer came like a ton of bricks in his head. He remembered what Zeref had told him yesterday, about how bonds were the true source of strength, and that you should always protect them. Naruto, who has been feeling nothing but loneliness since he was a child until Zeref came, wanted nothing but to never feel that again. And for that he would protect those bonds even with his own life. He would protect the people he truly cared about. Even if right now the only one in that category was Zeref, he hoped that he could make more of those bonds, so that he never had to feel truly alone, never again. "I want to protect those that I really care about, those whose bond to me make me stronger, those that I can call friends, those that I can call a family," confessed Naruto, passion and determination in both his voice and eyes. "I see, that's a good answer, little human. Just make sure to never forget that. After all, power can corrupt even the most pure of all souls," said Raijin just before flapping his wings, raising a lot of wind and Naruto himself of the ground. The young blonde thought he was going to hit the rocky floor, but instead he found himself falling into nothingness, the floor and everything in it having disappeared a long time ago. "Good luck, little human. You're going to need it," were the last ominous word Naruto heard the powerful dragon said, and then everything went black. While of that happened, in the real world you would find a passed out Naruto and a meditating Zeref just where we left them. The dark mage was waiting for his apprentice to end his little soul conversation with Raijin, knowing that said conversation was needed for both the human and the dragon. Zirif had always wondered where the other 4 dragons were. After all, he had spent a good part of his life here in the elemental nation searching for them after finding Raijin by a mere accident. In reality, he had heard rumors about some powerful monster that resided in Oni no Kuni, demon country, so he went there to investigate, and ended up in a really big cave in which he found the powerful dragon. He of course was not going to let the chance slip away, so he asked the powerful beast to give him a part of his power so that when he met with Naruto he would have a powerful magic to teach him. Sadly, the dragon had denied the request, saying that he would not mess with humans, let alone give them power, so Zirif had to go with plan B and challenge the old lizard to a duel. Raijin was a tough opponent, he had to admit that, but he still was not at the same level of someone like Agnologia. So Zirif was able to defeat him, and after sealing a part of his power in the lacrima, he sealed the soul of the dragon himself in it, planning to at least fulfill the dragon's last wish of knowing who was going to use his magic. After that, Zirif went to search for the other 4 dragons, hoping that they would lend him their powers without having to get into a death fight. Sadly for him, he was not able to find any of them, so in the end he was just going to do what he could with what he had, which was a lot if you ask him. After all, he had to say that Kaminari no Metsuryu Meiho, lightning dragon slayer magic, was a pretty powerful lost magic, and that in a world where a good part of its technique were based in the elements, being completely immune to one of them was a damn good advantage. Gah, my head groaned someone, getting Zirif's attention. Of course, the one that just groaned was none other than Naruto himself, who was just getting up from his mental conversation with Raijin. How do you feel, Naruto-kun? Asked softly Zirif, who decided to ask later for details about Naruto's conversation with Raijin. Naruto did not answer though. He just looked at his sensei with a smirk on his face just before lifting his right arm and making a fist. Naruto concentrated his magic and gave it form in his mind, the form of a lightning, which he actually found natural for him. And just before Zirif's eyes, Naruto's arm started to release static until it was covered completely in electricity. I think I'm good, sensei. That day, a dragon slayer was born. Chapter 3. One step forward and a meeting. Konohagaku no Sato, 12 years after the Kyuubi attack, the Ninja Academy. It was this place where young kids entered, and after 3 years they could finally become ninjas of the village. It was this place that saw the birth of the strongest team known as the Densetsu no Sannin, Great 3 Ninjas. And right now a special group of students were having their first month of class. What makes this group so special? The answer was simply, it was the fact that the majority of the young ninjas in training were the heirs of the many clans that Konoha has. These young soon-to-be ninjas were basically the future of the village, and it was the Ninja Academy where they would start their first step towards being proud shinobi and kunoichi of the leaf. One of these youngsters was a young blonde, blue-eyed boy with 2 sets of whiskers marks in his cheeks. Said blonde was right now looking out of the window from his seat right at the back of the class, thinking of how he could be doing real training instead of hearing about the history of the village. This boy was none other than Uzumaki Namikaze's Naruto, our hero, and right now said hero was, to put it simply, bored. He knew that the Ninja Academy standards weren't that high, but with just 3 weeks of class he could already predict that the next 3 years were not going to be any better. After all, the only thing they have been doing in class was speak of the Shodaime, and how awesome he was. We get it, he was a godly shinobi. There is no need to tell us that again and again, thought the young dragon slayer while releasing an exasperated sigh, annoyed that his normal training with Zirif had to be cut in half because of this lectures. Before the academy even started, one of Naruto's biggest concern was that his parents would forget to register him, and it was not until his sensei told him that he was registered since birth thanks to the village laws that he actually calmed himself down. The young blonde had of course spoken with his sensei about how they were going to adjust his training schedule with the academy's one. Zirif had just told them that he would be going to the academy every day, and then he would come to the training room and train for the rest of the day, effectively cutting his normal training time in half every day, something that irked Naruto a lot, but sadly there was nothing he could do. Thinking about his lost training time made Naruto remember about the changes that Zirif made to his normal training regime. It was not that big, just that some of the days were changed to nothing but magical training with his Kaminari no Metsuryu Meiho, lightning dragon slayer magic, and Zirif had made him use said magic in their spars. Although even with that he still couldn't put a good fight against his sensei, and Zirif had not even used magic in spars. His sensei had told him that since he was a 2D generation dragon slayer, which means that he didn't have a dragon to train with, he would have to create his own spells, something that preoccupied the young blonde in the end. But he actually found that it was not that hard, like he could easily picture the different techniques in his mind. He just had to learn how to use them in real life. Zirif had told him that this was probably a side effect of having rage and soul inside of him, and that he could probably unlock more spells in his mind if he trained harder, but that it was up to him to practice and master them. Combine that with Zirif's personal advice, since he had seen a lot of dragons and Dragon Slayer, and you could say that Naruto's magical development was going great. The young apprentice of Zirif was taken out of his thoughts by the sound of a sigh to his right, which made the young blonde turn to his right to see who was that. He guessed was probably as bored as him, and he had to say he was not surprised to see who was. After all, she always seated herself in this same spot besides him. This girl had black hair that was pulled into a ponytail that barely reached the start of her back, and she also had 2 bangs framing her face. She had black eyes and pale skin. She was wearing a simple blue shirt that had her clan symbol on the back of it, and she was also wearing some white shorts and a pair of blue sandals. This girl was none other than Uchiha Sasuke, daughter of the head of the Uchiha clan and little sister of the prodigy known as Uchiha Itachi. And just like our young hero, she was bored as hell. The young Uchiha of course knew, just like Naruto, that the standards of the academy had dropped after the third ninja war since her brother had told her about it, but in her opinion this was getting ridiculous. Maybe if he talked about Uchiha Madara this would at least be a little interesting, but the only thing the instructor talked about has been Hashirama Senju and his Mokuton would release, thought the young Uchiha, more than tired of this endless talking about the Shodaime. It was really no surprise that she was more interested in Uchiha Madara than Senju Hashirama. After all, the man has been her idol since she could remember. Sure, he was considered a traitor to the village, but no one could deny that he still is considered the strongest Uchiha, and power like that was something that Uchiha Sasuke wanted to achieve more than anything. Now if only she managed to become that strong without the whole exiled from the village and fighting the Hokage thing that Madara was famous for. The young black-haired girl was taken out of her thoughts by the feeling of someone watching her from her left, but when she turned the only thing she saw was the young blonde that always sat on that spot reading a scroll, completely ignoring the lesson of the chunin instructor. Sasuke herself had to admit that she had never spoke to the first son of the Namikaze Uzumaki clan. The reason for that was actually quite simple. Tough. Making friends was not her strong part. In fact, from all the other kids in this class the only one she talked to was Mito, and that's just because the two of them have been friends and kind of rivals since she could remember, which was because the strong friendship her mother Mikoto and Mito's mother had. The reason for her always sitting here was simply because there were no other spots the first day of class, so she had to sit in the last spot, which was of course the one she's sitting next to the right of young Naruto, and after that day she actually kept sitting there even though there were other free spots just because. Unlike the majority of the other student, Naruto was pretty quiet and did not speak to her in any way, something that Sasuke actually liked since she came to this place to prepare herself to be a kunoichi, not to make friends. So it was with nothing but a raised brow that the young Uchiha looked at the young blonde, a little curious about what he was reading, but hardly enough to ask, so she just simply went to pay attention once again to the class, even though in her opinion this was a waste of time. Meanwhile the young apprentice of Zeref had already forgotten about the lesson completely, and he was now reading a scroll about the art of Fuinjutsu, sealing techniques, something that Naruto actually found that he was quite interested about. He guessed that it was probably because of his Uzumaki blood, since said clan was famous for their incredible seals, and that the art itself was perfect for someone like him whose training made him able to focus easily in such a complex art. Yes, the lives for this boys and girls in the academy was just starting, something that actually pissed more than one student. Thank Kami were the thoughts of many students that are leaving the academy since the class was finally over. One of these students was Naruto himself, who was more than happy to end that boring torture they call lessons and finally go to do some real training with his sensei. The young blonde started walking towards the place where the magical circle was, but he was not going to the Hokage monument this time though. Naruto entered one of the residential districts of the village after walking for a while, and after more minutes of walking he entered into an abandoned alley, and after making sure no one was watching him he used Henji no Jutsu, transformation technique, to make himself look like a normal middle-aged man with brown hair, brown eyes and a little goatee. After that Naruto went out of the alley and went to a little apartment that was part of a building that had more apartments. He took out some keys and opened the door, showing a simple apartment that had nothing but a little kitchen, a table, a door that led to a bathroom, and at the far end a little bedroom with nothing but a bed. The young blonde released the jutsu and without hesitation he just went to the end of the bedroom, and there he just pressed his hand against the wooden wall, in which as soon as he did it a magical circle actually appeared, making Naruto smile a little bit. This apartment was actually one of the gifts Zeref had given to him a few weeks before starting the academy. Zeref had given Naruto this little apartment for two reasons. One, because it was more close to the academy, which would help Naruto, and the second reason was simply because Zeref wanted to take Naruto out of his family's house, since staying there might cause problems in the future. The dark mage had to admit he was a little preoccupied about someone noticing that the young blonde was not living at his family's house, but it had been more than a month and nothing had happened, so Zeref had to admit that, just like Naruto had said before, no one was waiting for him at that house. The other gift he got was very simple in comparison, but it was something he always had on. It was Zeref's own necklace. The dark mage had just told him that his was a good luck charm, but for Naruto this was more than just that. After all, he was a boy that never got any birthday presents since he could remember, so this necklace meant a lot for him. Naruto could still remember how he actually cried a little bit just before giving Zeref a really big hug, something that the Dark Lord has responded with an awkward pat in his back, showing how weird this situation was for him. That day though was the moment Naruto decided that Zeref was truly like a father to him. Going back to the present, the young dragon slayer pushed a little of his magic towards the magical circle, making it shine with a purple light just before the young blonde disappeared in a black flash, a smile present in his face all the time. After all training with his sensei, no, his father was his favorite part of the day. Konohagakure no Sato, 1 month later. Sasuke Uchiha was one frustrated girl. Why, you may ask? Because her Oniai-sama had promised her that he would help her with her training with kunai, shuriken and katan jutsu, fire-style techniques, but he had gotten a mission at the last moment, making him unable to help her, something that pissed her off to no end. Don't misunderstand, Sasuke knew that her brother had a lot of responsibilities as a member of ANBU, but still this has been the third time he had cancelled their training, so it was normal for her to feel frustrated as this. It was because of that reason that you could find the young Uchiha walking toward a training ground in which she could practice alone on a Sunday, a scowl present on her face. Of course she could have gone to any of the training ground that her clan had, but today she really just wanted to burn something a little bit, and she decided that it was better to do it alone where no one would watch her unleashing her fury. So it was with that mentality that she went to a training ground which she knew was empty almost all the time since no one used it. So it was really surprising to the young black-haired girl when she actually found someone in this place, doing what it looked like taijutsu training. It only took a moment for Sasuke to figure out who was the one in the training ground. After all, that hair color combined with those black clothes could only belong to one person in her opinion. Since when Namikaze trained in this place, though Sasuke, whose curiosity towards Naruto's training was going as high as it can be, her first thought was of just leaving and finding another training ground, but then an idea came to her mind. This was the perfect opportunity to not only get some info on someone that was on her class, but it could also be a good practice at staying silent and gather information, something that her Oni-sama had told her it was important for ANBU. So with that in mind, the young Uchiha got herself into a tree that was inside the training ground, but far enough that in her opinion the blonde Namikaze would not notice her, and with her eyes focused on said boy she just watched. She watched as the blonde did some moves of a fighting style she had never seen in her life just before start practicing throwing kunai and shuriken at the bark of a tree, and the young Uchiha found herself actually a little impressed by the skills the blonde had with those weapons. Of course he was not at the level of her Oni-sama in her opinion, but he was definitely better than the majority of the other student at the academy. That thought brought a frown to Sasuke's face. After all, she could remember that Namikaze's ability with kunai and shuriken were not really great in the academy's tests. So how is it that now he was so good at it when in the last shuriken lesson, which was a week ago, he just managed to nail half of the shuriken at the training dummy? Sasuke found her curiosity towards the blonde boy increasing with every minute. It was after a few minutes of practicing with the normal ninja tools that Naruto went to the middle of the training ground and started meditating, something that confused Sasuke a lot. After all, she knew about the art of meditation, but she didn't know that someone of her age already knew how to do it. The young Uchiha was just about to leave to her house to ponder the mystery that Uzumaki Namikaze Naruto was, maybe even ask Mito about it, since she was his sister, but a calm and monotonous voice stopped her right on her tracks. Spying is rude, you know? Those words made the young Uchiha turn around just to see that the young apprentice of Zeref was still in the middle of the training ground, although his eyes were open and they were looking right at the spot in which she was hiding, making Sasuke's eyes open wide in surprise. After all, she had hidden herself perfectly, so how did Namikaze find her? The young Uchiha girl had two options at that point. She could both run away and act like this never happened, or she could confront the blonde Uzumaki Namikaze boy and see if she could get any information. It took less of a second for her to decide. Naruto had his gaze completely focused on Sasuke since the moment she stepped down from the tree until she got just in front of him. Her arms were crossed over her chest, and a scowl was still present on her face. "What do you want, Uchiha?" asked Naruto in the same voice from before after standing up, his eyes looking directly at Sasuke's with a bored gaze, something that annoyed Sasuke a little bit. "What were you doing?" asked Sasuke, ignoring Naruto's question completely, something that just made Naruto's brow to rise a little bit in interest before answering. "Training. And since when were you so good at throwing things?" asked Sasuke a little forcefully, wanted to get to the bottom of this fast. "That's none of your concern, Uchiha. You should just leave already," answered Naruto, annoyed about Sasuke, but he didn't show it. Meanwhile, the young Uchiha was growing impatient. She wanted to know exactly how strong was this guy, since apparently the skills he showed in the academy were fake. After all, no one gets that good in just a week, so she got to the conclusion that, for some reason, this guy was hiding his real skills. But why though? Sasuke was going to find out tough, and after a few seconds she thought of a way to see if her theory was true. "Fight me," said Sasuke with a glare directed at Naruto, although this just got another razor brow from the blonde. "Excuse me? You heard me. Fight me," said Sasuke with more steel in her voice. Her plan was actually simple, to fight him and see exactly how strong he was, just to see if he was really holding back at the academy. After all, the student have already spared once there, and if she remembered correctly, Naruto had not done it really good against Kiba Inuzuka when they fought. While Sasuke was expecting an answer, Naruto was just about to just say no, but a thought stopped the blonde in his tracks. "This might be a good chance to test exactly how strong I am," thought Naruto, who wanted to test himself with someone else than Zeref. After all, sparring with him will always end in the same result, a calm Zeref and a beaten Naruto. And since he could not show his real strength in the academy because his sensei had made it a task for him to stay under the radar in the academy and not showing off, which meant that he had to control his own skills and act like a regular student, not too good but not too bad either. When he asked Zeref about why he had to do this, he just told him that control is a tool that must be used at all times, and that deception was a ninja's #1 weapon. So Naruto had no other choice but to accept that and control himself at the academy, which meant that right now he finally had an opportunity to test himself a little bit. "Alright," answered the young blonde, getting a surprised expression from the Uchiha, before it turned into a little smirk with obvious confidence in her eyes. After all, even if she thought that Naruto was stronger than what he showed in the academy, there was still no way he was stronger than her, and after she beats him she could ask all the questions she wanted. No jutsu or weapons, just taijutsu, understood? Confirmed Naruto, getting a nod of acceptance from Sasuke, who was now standing a little far away from Naruto and had already entered in her clan fighting style, which if Naruto remembered right was called the Interceptor Fist. That was focused around predicting and countering your opponent's movements thanks to the Uchiha's Kekkai Genkai, the Sharingan, Copy Will I. But if Naruto's guess was right, Sasuke had not awakened her Sharingan, which meant her fighting style would be incomplete. In that case, Hajime, said Naruto just before entering in his own taijutsu style, one that was centered in speed and precision. This style is one of the many that Zeref showed him, and it was used for dodging and evading attacks and hitting your enemy just at the right time, which combined with Naruto's natural speed which could go higher if he used magic made it an incredible force. The young blonde decided to mess with Sasuke a little bit tough, as a form of payback for spying on him, even though he knew she was here from the beginning. So he just stayed there, knowing that Sasuke would not attack first since that was not the Uchiha's fighting style. After a few minutes of nothing but staring, which got Sasuke pretty mad if her glare towards Naruto was any sign to go by, the young Uchiha decided to just attack herself, and the stupid blonde was not going to move, so she ran at him with what Naruto guessed was probably genin-like speed, which was surprising in his opinion since they were just starting the academy. But still for Naruto she was moving really slow, so when Sasuke finally reached him and aimed a right fist at his face, Naruto easily evaded it by sidestepping to the left, but the young Uchiha retaliated with a roundhouse kick aimed once again to his head, which he dodged by moving backwards faster than the kick. This got a growl from Sasuke, who tried her luck again with another punch. Only this time after dodging, Naruto grabbed Sasuke's wrist with enough strength that the Uchiha girl could not get free, so she went for another fist. But the young apprentice of Zeref grabbed her other wrist too, and before she could even do anything she just pushed away from him, and then he widened the distance between them a little by jumping backwards. This continued for a little more than 10 minutes, in which Sasuke would try to hit Naruto, and the young blonde would just either dodge or block without attacking. Not even once, even though he had more than one opportunity for it, which was making Satsuki more angrier at every second. After 15 minutes of sparing, the young blonde decided to put an end to it, so when the next punch from Sasuke came, he once again grabbed her wrist and twisted her arm in her back too fast for her to see. Then he used his legs and pushed Sasuke, making her fall face first into the ground. "Do you yield?" asked Naruto, twisting Sasuke's arm a little more to prove her that this little fight was more than over. Sasuke murmured something under her breath which Naruto didn't hear really well. Was that? "I said that I yield, now get off me, you baka!" yelled Sasuke, more than angry for being bested so easily by someone of her age. Said someone accepted that and released Sasuke from his grip before standing and offering the young girl a hand to help her, which she just slapped away before actually storming out of the training ground with a heavy scowl on her face. And if Naruto heard her right, her last words before leaving sounded like, "This is not over." Naruto had a confused expression in his face all time though, his confusion getting to his mouth in a single comment. "Was it something I said?" Let it be known that Uzumaki Namikaze's Naruto was not the best when working with people. He blamed that to his sensei though, Kanehigakure no Sato, 2 years after. It has been 2 years since the academy started for Naruto, and just like every Sunday he found himself in the same spot, which was of course on top of certain Uchiha princess. No, not like that. Ever since their little fight 2 years ago, Sasuke Uchiha made it a personal mission to challenge Naruto to a spar every Sunday at the same exact training ground. Naruto had considered changing place, but he didn't found any reason for it since those little spars were a good workout in Naruto's opinion, and even Zeref himself had said that it was a good opportunity for Naruto to train with someone else besides him. So the young blonde had accepted the spar every time Sasuke challenged him, and of course she had yet to win one. So it was not surprised that we can find Naruto, now 15 years old, on top of Sasuke's back, her arm once again twisted in her back and a frustrated expression in her cute face. "Do you yield?" asked Naruto, a little of humor in his voice. After all, this was his favorite way of ending the spars. It was also the way Sasuke hated more. "Yes, you baka, now get off me before I burn you," threatened half-heartedly Sasuke before releasing an annoyed sigh. The young blonde was fast to comply, and just like the first time they spared, he offered his hand to help her get up. Only this time she actually accepted with the smallest of smiles appearing on her lips. Both her and Naruto had changed a lot in the last 2 years. For example, the apprentice of Zeref had changed his outfit completely. He now wears a sleeveless black shirt with a black jacket that has white lining along the edges. Said jacket had long sleeves and was being connected at the top with a button, and falling slightly short of waist length, making it possible to see his black shirt. At the back of said jacket there was the same symbol that his old clothes had, the head of a dragon in silver color. Naruto also had some black A&BU pants with his kunai holder in his right leg and a pair of black ninja sandals. He also wears black fingerless gloves, and the necklace Zeref have him was proudly in his neck and over his jacket. Not only his clothes changed though, his golden blonde hair was now tamer, and it reached his shoulders, and his whisker marks had started to fade away, something that started happening a year ago. The same day he started his training in Yami no Meho, Darkness Magic. 1 year ago, Zeref's training place. Seriously? asked an excited yet nervous Naruto at his father figure, getting a nod from said dark mage. Yes, Naruto-kun, today we'll start your training in Yami no Meiho, darkness magic, confirmed Zirif, getting Naruto's eyes to get full with excitement at finally learning the magic that his sensei uses. But he instantly went to have a serious face as soon as he saw that Zirif was even more serious than normal, which meant that whatever he was going to say, it was really important. First, I'm going to explain exactly what you're going to learn, Naruto-kun. What I'm going to teach you is Yami no Meiho, darkness magic, in its purest form, which means, Naruto-kun, that you are going to learn how to use the darkness you have in your heart at its full capacity, explained Zirif. And he then used his hand to stop Naruto from speaking, since he knew the young blonde would probably say something. You have to understand, Naruto-kun, that every single human being has darkness in his or her heart, no matter who they are or what life they had. What I'm going to teach, Naruto-kun, is how to use your magic to give form to that darkness, to use it as you see fit without letting it to control you, Naruto-kun. You could say that there are three kind of people in this world, Naruto-kun: those that denied their own darkness, those that let their own darkness to control them, and those that control said darkness, those that accept they have it but they don't let it control them. For you to learn this form of magic, Naruto-kun, you must become that type of person, or you won't learn anything. Yami no Meiho, darkness magic, is one of the magic that depends more heavily in your feelings, Naruto-kun. That's why I have been teaching you how to control them, since with this kind of magic everything is about intent. You must not only give form to your darkness with magic, Naruto-kun, you must also give it a purpose in your mind, or else it won't work, which means that is a style with endless possibilities. It just depends on how you use it, said Zirif. Seeing how his words made Naruto look at the ground with a thoughtful look in his face. Do you think you're ready to learn, Naruto-kun? Asked Zirif, his black eyes focusing in nothing but his apprentice. He had to admit that teaching Yami no Meiho, darkness magic, to someone of Naruto's age could be quite dangerous, since it meant opening a real Pandora's box. But Zirif trusted in his apprentice's inner strength, and he knew that Naruto was more than ready for it, so he was not surprised when Naruto looked at him, determination burning in his eyes, and just gave him a simple yet firm nod. And with that, the training once again begun. Naruto had to admit that learning how to use Yami no Meiho, darkness magic, had to be the hardest thing he had ever done. It has been a year already, and even with Zirif as his sensei, he still had problems with using the most simple of spells, since they always were too unstable, or he would just simply get too tired after doing just one of them. When he asked his sensei about what he was doing wrong, he just told him that it was all because of the lack of practice. But Naruto felt that his sensei was hiding something from him. On the other hand, his training with his Kaminari no Metsuryu Meiho, lightning dragon slayer magic, was going more than great, since his control over it has increased a lot and he could now use a lot of spells without getting tired, something that Zirif had said was in part thanks to how big his magical contained and Tenketsu point had become because of the training, although he had yet to learn any of the Metsuryu Oji, Dragon Slayer's secret art, though. The young blonde was taken out of his thoughts by Sasuke waving her hand in front of his face, which made Naruto's attention go from his training to his Uchiha companion, and he had to admit that Sasuke was becoming quite the beauty. She had let her raven black hair loose since last year, and it reached to her middle back now, with two bangs framing her quite beautiful face. She had changed her outfit just like him. She now wears a gray high-collared short-sleeved shirt with a zipper in its front that showed her growing B-cup breasts. She also has some blue wrist warmers. She was wearing ANBU pants just like him and a pair of blue shinobi sandals. You were spacing out this, said Sasuke in a matter-of-fact tone, looking at his sparring partner with a raised brow. Just thinking about some stuff. You don't have to worry. I wasn't. If you say so, said Naruto before sitting in the ground and started meditating, which he found really relaxing after sparring. Meanwhile, Sasuke just stood there, looking at Naruto before releasing a sigh and going to a tree in which she could rest under its shadows. The two soon-to-be ninjas just stayed there in a peaceful silence. But of course, everything has to come to an end at some point. We are graduating soon, said Sasuke, her gaze once again in her blonde friend. Yes, friend, she never thought she would ever call this guy that. But after 2 years on sparring every Sunday and actually talking to him after that, she actually found he was not that bad of a guy. Although it annoyed her that he acted so calm just like her Oni-sama, and she started liking his presence even more after that incident. What happened was actually simple. A year ago, during their normal training routine, meaning Naruto beating her easily, she twisted her ankle really bad to the point she could not really move without feeling a lot of pain. So Naruto, being the gentleman he was, decided to actually carry her to her house like a freaking princess, which found protest from the Uchiha beauty, who had a blush during the entire trip. But it wasn't like she could really do anything. So after a few minutes they both finally reached to her house and Naruto helped her to get inside, and when he asked about the other members of her family, she just told him that she was going to be alone for the day and that he should just leave. But of course he didn't, saying that someone that's hurt should not be alone like this, so he decided to actually stay and take care of her, which got another blush and more protest from the young Uchiha, but Naruto would have none of that. So after treating her injury as best as he could, he actually cooked her lunch and dinner, and stayed in the house until it was really late just to make sure that she didn't do anything stupid while injured. At the end of the day she simply asked why was he doing all of this for her, and his answer had made her brain stop for a whole minute just there. That's what friends are for, aren't they? And since that day Sasuke actually found herself waiting for Sunday to spar and then speak to him. Of course she still saw him and seated herself beside him. but they rarely talked at all in the academy, although they did eat lunch together every day. Well, more like Naruto ate in the roof alone, and after Sasuke found him, she just stayed there and ate with him in a peaceful silence. Yet just a few months more of torture, and we are all set to go, said Naruto, who was still meditating. This answer actually another little smile to Sasuke's face just before it became a scowl. Do you think we are going to be put in the same team? Asked Sasuke out of nowhere, and even though she tried to hide it, Naruto could detect a little of hope in her voice, which didn't surprise him at all since he too would like to be in the same team with her, and with luck enough it would be her, Naruto Shikamaru, and Naruto himself. Why Shikamaru, you may ask? Well, a couple of months ago our blonde hero actually found himself playing a game of shogi with Shikamaru during lunch when the lazy member of the Nara clan decided to use the roof as a place to view the clouds. After that game, which Shikamaru won, the two of them would actually play during lunch, in which sometimes Akimichi Choji stayed too, and the young blonde found himself impressed by Shikamaru's strategic abilities, so he really would like to be in the same team as him. And if you added someone he knew like Sasuke, then he would be in a team he could easily work with. I don't know, anything could happen, although I do hope that happens, tough, answered Naruto, getting a nod and another smile from Sasuke, happy that her friend wanted to be in the same team as her. If that happened, just make sure to not drag me down, Naruto joked Sasuke with a smirk, which got Naruto to open his eyes and to look at her with a bored gaze. Interesting, you took the words right out of my mouth, answered back Naruto, who found himself moving his face to dodge some kunai that Sasuke just decided to throw at him, a tick mark present of her forehead. Yes, it was definitely quite a friendship. It was once again one of those Sundays in which Naruto had to go to the now dubbed training room because of something Zirif wanted to tell him. So that was the reason you could found Naruto walking in the hallway that connected the rooms this place had to the training room. Of course, his sudden goodbye had raised questions from Sasuke, questions that Naruto found himself lying to since he could not reveal this place. More than once Sasuke has asked about how Naruto had gotten so strong, since she knew that, according to Mito, he didn't train with his family. Naruto had just told her that he had a really good sensei and always tried to change the subject every time, so Sasuke stopped asking about it after a while. But she was intended to find out though, so she had told him that when she finally defeated him in a fight he would have to tell her anything, something that Naruto accepted just to make her stop asking about it. The young dragon slayer finally reached the training room and, just as usual, he found his sensei meditating in the middle of it, so he just stayed there, waiting for his sensei to tell him the reason for him to call him on a Sunday, since every time that happened it was for something big. After some minutes Zirif stopped meditating and he stood, looking at his Naruto with his normal emotionless gaze before speaking. Today Naruto-kun, you will do the final step in your training in Yami no Meiho, darkness magic, said Zirif, getting a raised brow from his student. What do you mean by that, sensei? And what is this final step? Asked Naruto, curiosity heavy in his voice. Naruto-kun, there is something you must do before you can truly use Yami no Meiho, darkness magic, properly. And before you ask, the reason I didn't tell you about it at the beginning was simply because you were not ready for it. But I wanted you to understand how Yami no Meiho, darkness magic, worked, so I started teaching you about it before. That's the reason about why you can't use Yami no Meiho, darkness magic, properly. But today we will correct that, said Zirif, making his apprentice eyes to go a little wide in understanding before speaking in a calm voice just like his father figure. What do I have to do? You are going to face your own darkness, Naruto-kun. That's the only way for you to be able to use Yami no Meiho, darkness magic. What do you mean by that? Asked the confused Naruto, wondering what facing your darkness meant. You'll understand once we start, but this is a test you must do on your own, and I can't guarantee you safety, Naruto-kun, so I must ask, are you sure you're ready to take this step? Once it begins there is no going back, said Zirif, his black eyes looking at Naruto's blue ones, searching for any doubt he may have. But he found none. So when Naruto told him that he was ready, Zirif had no objections and proceeded to start the test. Just like the other times, a magical circle in the ground activated itself. But this time something weird happened, and that was that Zirif made something appeared on his hand. The young blonde had barely enough time to reconfigure said thing as a katana just before said sword was plunged right in his chest, and he was surprised when he actually felt no pain, but he could feel getting weaker by the second. The last thing Naruto saw was Zirif's black eyes before he muttered something that barely catches Naruto's ears. Good luck. While Naruto was getting ready to face his biggest test to date, another man was walking through the streets of the clan district of the village, walking toward a specific house with an important task that in his opinion could affect Konoha a lot. That thought made the man chuckle a little bit. After all, some years in the past his love for this village went downhill, and he was sure that if it wasn't because of the meeting with that monster, he would have probably ended up becoming a traitor to the village. But now he was doing stuff for the good of the village. Yes, quite the irony. The thought of that meeting though was more than enough to bring fear to his eyes and to make his already pale face even more pale. After he had never been more scared in his whole life, not even the third ninja war brought so much anguish so him. That just showed how terrible that being was, so he truly didn't want to meet him again in his life. Too bad fate likes to screw with people so much. This black-haired man was taken out of his thoughts when he finally reached the house he was looking for. Since it was already late at night, he knew that both the man and women he wanted to talk to were already in the house. probably just finishing dinner or something. So he just decided to touch the doorbell and see who will open the door. He was not surprised at all when a man with spiky blonde hair and blue eyes opened the door. And the man could see that just behind this man was a woman with long red hair and violet eyes. Perfect, thought the black-haired man. After all, his objective here was something that needed the attention of both the Hokage and his wife, and there was no way he would leave before finishing his task. What are you doing here? Which was of course about certain blonde-haired mage, Orochimaru? Meanwhile, in an unknown place. Shock, surprise, confusion, lost for words. Any of those terms could be used right now to describe how Naruto felt right now. The reason for that was really simple. It was not the fact that he found himself in a really weird stadium in Kami knows where, no, it was because of the person that was standing in front of him, a twisted smirk in his face. Why would this person make Naruto feel this way? Well, the reason for that was simply because this guy could only be described as a clone of Naruto himself. The only difference was that his clothes were the completely opposite in color than Naruto, and his eyes were a bright yellow completely different of Naruto blue ones. There was also the aura that surrounded this guy since Naruto could feel nothing but ill intent from him. So the little weakling finally decided to show up, huh? Asked the Naruto look-alike, making said blonde to look at him with a glare. Who are you? Asked Naruto with an edge in his voice, after he felt nothing but trouble coming from this guy. Me? Said the yellow-eyed boy before a black aura appeared around him, which made Naruto's eyes to go wide just before he heard some words that he could not believe at all. I don't know who you can't recognize me, after all, said the guy just before his smirk widened even more. I am you, and with that the Naruto look-alike dashed towards Naruto at a speed that the blonde found himself difficult to follow. The test had just begun. Chapter 4. To face the truth. Unknown stadium in an unknown place. Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze was a confused and angered boy right now. First his sensei stabbed him with a sword and, even though it didn't hurt at all, it was still not right, in his opinion. Then after he woke up in this weird stadium that looked exactly like the one Konoha has, only that there were some weird black humanoid things in the stadium seats instead of people. He was attacked by someone that looked exactly like him. The only difference between them being that this weird copycat had weird yellow eyes and his clothes were completely white. He also had a twisted smirk that made Naruto really wary of him. Right now we can find our blonde hero looking at his clone with a powerful glare. After all, he just barely dodged a punch from this guy. He had jumped backwards to make more space between them in case this guy decided to do another surprise attack. Who the hell are you? Asked Naruto, rising his voice higher than he normally does, but he could not help it. After all, this guy was really putting him on edge. But his question only got a look from his clone that practically said, are you stupid? Are you deaf or what? I already told you, you idiot. I am you, said the Naruto look-alike, his twisted smirk widening more after each sentence. Of course this answer just got a stronger glare from Naruto, who could not understand what this guy was talking about at all. What do you mean by that? And just where are we anyway? Asked once again the young blonde, trying to get as much information as he could. This question only got that the smirk from the Naruto look-alike turned itself into an annoyed expression. Apparently this guy was upset about Naruto's lack of information. For freaking Kami's sake, do I have to spelt everything to you? Said the yellow-eyed Naruto, releasing an annoyed sigh after seeing that his counterpart did not understood what was going on. Seriously, how was he going to enjoy beating the crap out of him if he didn't even know what was going on? Fine then, I'll answer your stupid questions since I can't stand that stupid look on your face anyway, said the Naruto look-alike just before crossing his arms in front of his chest, his twisted smirk once again in his face and his yellow eyes shining brightly. Naruto decided to ignore the obvious insult for the sake of getting some answer from this weird clone of him, or whatever he was. First you're asking who I am and I answered you. I am you, or to be more specific, I am your dark side, your hidden feeling, your alter ego. I am your shadow, your true self. I am the darkness that resides in the deepest part of your soul, said Shadow Naruto, getting Naruto's eyes to widen in surprise. But Shadow Naruto was still not done if his smirk was anything to go by. Now about the location, I guess you could say that this place is your inner world or something like that. I don't really know nor care. The only thing that matters is that now you're here, I can finally deal with you once and for all, declared Shadow Naruto just before the dark aura from before appeared once again, making Naruto stand on guard, although his eyes were still full of confusion. Suddenly Shadow Naruto started to chuckle. A few seconds later that chuckle turned itself into a full-blown crazy laugh that had Naruto looking at his clone like he had lost it, which he probably did if you ask him. Yes, is going to be glorious. Once I'm done with you, I'll go to where our precious family lives and I'm going to make them pay for what they have done to us. First I'll start with our dear siblings. Oh yes, I'll enjoy making them beg for mercy while I torture them one by one. But I won't kill them. No, that would be just too easy. Now I know, I'll make them watch how I kill or Dermiandadity. Yes, that should be good enough, but who knows? I may go a little more wild at the end, if you know what I mean. Wait, you probably don't, you are still a virgin after all, but yelled Shadow Naruto, his crazy laugh starting once again at the end of it. Meanwhile Naruto was looking at him with a terrified expression in his face just before he shocked his head, trying to get what this guy said out of his mind. There was no way this guy could be him at all. Sure, his relationship with his family was more than ruined, but he would never stand so low to do something like what this guy just implied. Sadly for our young hero, his shadow was far from over, and after I deal with them is the village turn. Hell yeah, I'm going to burn that shithole to the ground and I'm going to kill every single person there. Oh, it's going to be so fun, I can already hear their screams of agony. I'll make the Kyuubi look like a little kitty, they won't even know what hit them, explained Shadow Naruto, pure and simply bloodlust evident is his eyes. Naruto could not even start to understand what was going on this guy's mind. But now he was more sure than before, there was no way this guy could be him, or any part of him. There was just no way in Naruto's mind. After all, he was not a monster like this guy, right? You're sick was the only thing the young apprentice of Zeref could say, his expression one of shock but then turned into nothing but disgust and anger. Meanwhile, Shadow Naruto stopped laughing and looked at him like he was stupid, since apparently he heard what Naruto just said. Excuse me, Imsik? You may want to look at yourself in a mirror there, kid, since the only thing I'm saying is how we really feel and what we really want to do, said Shadow Naruto, whose crazy smirk appeared once again at seeing Naruto's heated glare in response to his declaration. You're lying, there's no way you can be me, you can't be me, no, you are not me, said the young blonde, his quiet voice turning itself into a yell at the end of the sentence. As soon as he finished his word, Shadow Naruto was covered in an even more powerful aura, and this time random red sparks started to appear around his body. Naruto could feel the incredible power that this guy had, and for the first time in his life since meeting Raijin, the young blonde actually felt fear. Fear at this guy not only for his power, but at his willingness to do so much harm with it. That's what I wanted to hear, said Shadow Naruto, a twisted smirk appearing once again on his face just before he moved even faster than before in Naruto's direction, his fist engulfed completely in red electricity. The battle had begun. Meanwhile in Konoha, we need to talk were the first words that the fourth Hokage, Minato Namikaze, heard after opening the door of his house and seeing that the person who decided to visit him this late at night was none other than Orochimaru, one of the three legendary Densetsu no Sannin, three great ninjas. Talk about what, Orochimaru? Did something happen? Asked the blonde Hokage, his completely attention in the snake summoner. After all, it was really weird if not unheard of for Orochimaru to actually come to this house. After all, he normally reported whatever he had to report in the Hokage's office. Never here. I guess you could say that. May I come in? I believe it's better if we have this conversation in private, said the black-haired ninja, his normal creepy smile completely gone since his face was one of seriousness, which made both Minato and Kushina, who was standing a little behind her husband, look at the snake summoner funny. Sure was the only thing Minato said before he led Orochimaru to the living room of the house, in which Orochimaru took a seat in one of the chairs that was around a coffee table while the hero of the third Shinobi War sat in the nearby couch. Would you like some tea, Orochimaru-san? Asked Kushina, speaking for the first time since Orochimaru entered her house. But her question just got a little shook of the man head. That won't be necessary, but I would appreciate if you could stay to hear what I have to tell. After all, it concerns the both of you, answered Orochimaru swiftly, his attention focused in both the Hokage and his wife. He wondered exactly how they were going to react to what he was going to say, but if his own assumption were correct, then this was going to be one interesting conversation. This declaration brought a look of suspicion from both Minato and Kushina, but neither of them said anything. The reed-headed Jounin sat alongside her husband in the sofa, expecting to hear whatever was the news that Orochimaru so urgently had to share with them. So, what is the problem, Orochimaru? It's about the assignment I appointed you about the academy? Asked Minato, considering the different thing that could have bring the snake summoner here since he has never done so in the past. To those that knew Orochimaru, they could tell you that the man had a little sadistic side inside of him that complemented a little bit his thirst for knowledge. So for those people, it was not surprised that said man was none other than the head of the torture and interrogation division of Konoha. But it was only the Hokage, his wife, and a few number of people that knew that Orochimaru was given the task of observing the students that entered the academy, and their progress in it. The reason for giving Orochimaru was simple since, in Minato's opinion, Orochimaru was one of the person that knew more about human psychology in the whole village, something that made him really effective in his job at the TI division. So Minato assigned Orochimaru the task of observing the development of the student of the academy so that he could not only form the most effective teams by the time the student graduated, but so that Orochimaru could find out which student were better suited for some specialized task like the healed squad Tsunade made. It was after a year of Orochimaru having that job that he made the recommendation to Minato of changing how the team system worked, so that, instead of having teams with 3 genins and 1 jounin, Konoha would have teams made of 4 genins and 2 jounins. While some of the members of the council complained about how that system would use too many of the jounin that the village had, Minato still went with it since he had no reason to doubt Orochimaru at all. And he was glad he did. After all, the system worked even better than the old one since this new one allowed not only for the jounin to focus more on their genin, and allow them to teach them a bigger variety of things, but it also improved the survival rate of teams a lot. Yes, it is. I'm not going to lose anyone's time here, so I'll go straight to the matter at hand. Minato, how good is your relationship with your son? Asked Orochimaru to both Minato and Kushina, making one of them look at him with a frown while the other had a preoccupied expression on her face. Why are you asking this? Did something happen to Memikun? Asked Kushina, obviously worried about anything that could have happened to her son. But she was even more worried because if something did happen, then her son had not told either her of his father. Calm down, Kushina. Nothing happened to Mimikun at all. He's actually in the top of his class, although he could do better in the written part if you ask me, said Orochimaru, making both parents sigh in relief, although the black-haired snake summoner was now even more preoccupied. After all, it did not escape his attention the fact that they only asked for one of their sons. Why are you asking then? Asked Minato, confusion obvious in his face and voice. I think you misunderstood a little bit there, so let me be more specific this time. How good is your relationship with your son Naruto-kun? And just there Orochimaru saw a reaction that made all his suspicion even more of a reality, which made him release a mental sigh since this just made everything harder. As soon as Orochimaru asked his question, both Minato and Kushina just looked at him with an unreadable expression just before their eyes widened until they were like plates. Then the both of them just looked at each other with the same expression. All of this just made Orochimaru to raise a brow in interest. Meanwhile, the young user of the Hiraishin no Jutsu, Flying Thunder God technique, pondered the question in his mind, and he really did not like the answer he was getting. After all, it even took him a couple of seconds to actually remember that he had another son besides Menma, and even tough he was trying really hard to remember any memory with his first son. He could not actually do it, like he had completely forgotten about him, and that feeling was something that made Minato panic a little bit. How could he forget his own son? Kushina's thoughts were even more wild than her husband, but just like him, she could not remember any moment with her son. Even tough, she thought hard about important moments like birthdays, training days, and their first day at the academy. She just could not picture him in any of those, like if he never was there, which was something that made Kushina's heart to twist in pain. How was it possible to not have any memories with one of her sons? There was no way she could have neglected him like that. Right? Both the Hokage and her wife's attention were taken out of their thoughts by a cough from Orochimaru, who knew enough about human conduct to figure out the answer to his question just by looking at them. I'm going to guess that it's not good, isn't it? Well, that explains a part of the problem, said Orochimaru, and even though the last part was said in low voices, was loud enough for both Minato and Kushina to hear it. What are you talking about, Orochimaru? Did something happen to Naruto-kun at the academy? Almost yelled Kushina after standing up, her expression one of panic and fear. After all, if something did happen to her son at the academy, like him having to repeat a year of it just because either her or her husband helped him when they should, she would not be able to forgive herself. Minato stood up and put a hand over his wife's shoulder, trying to calm her down. But Orochimaru could easily see that the fourth fire shadow too was concerned about his son. He just was better at controlling his emotions, something that Orochimaru actually respected from this man. No, nothing at all, Kushina. Naruto-kun's development in the academy is pretty normal. His grades are not great, but they aren't good either. In fact, if you ask me, I'll say that they are too regular, answered Orochimaru with his arms crossed over his chest, looking at the two powerful ninja in front of him, who were not in the couch once again, waiting for the inevitable question. What do you mean by that? Asked Minato with a frown of both concern for his son and shame for feeling like he had forgotten about him at all, something that, in his opinion, made him a terrible father. Meanwhile, Kushina's gaze was focused on the floor, but you could easily see that her mind was somewhere else, probably trying to find any sort of moment with her firstborn child, but she just could not. All of a sudden, another thought made itself present in her mind, and this one almost made cry right there. She could not even remember how her son actually looked like. Sure, she remembered that he looked similar to Menma, but she could not remember his facial details or what kind of clothes he uses. For Kami's sake, she could not even remember actually buying clothes for him. All of these thoughts made the former container of the Kyuubi feel like the worst mother ever, and she just wondered how in Kami's name she had forgotten about her son at all. What I mean is that your son's scores in the academy are too unnatural if you asked me. First are the written tests. In those exams your son always gets half of the answers wrong while the other one are correct, meaning he gets half of the top score of the test. Now I can understand that happening sometimes, but the fact is that in the 2.5-year young Naruto-kun has been in the academy, he has always got the same points in every written exam, almost like he did this on purpose, said Orochimaru, seeing how Minato's from became bigger, and how Kushina's attention went from the floor to himself. Now if we go to the practical side of the academy, we can find the same kind of things in your son's grades. Always half of the maximum score when it comes to any practical lesson, and when it comes to the taijutsu part, Naruto-kun progress is just a little better than the average. Something that I could understand since it seems you have not been helping him at all in that aspect, said Orochimaru, making both Minato and Kushina flinch, not because of his tone since it was pretty neutral, but more in the fact that it was true. But for what I know, Naruto-kun should be one of the best in that part of the academy. After all, he has been having spars with Sasuke Uchiha for a while now, and she has yet to beat him. Both the Hokage's and his wife's eyes widened in surprise after hearing that. After all, they both knew that Sasuke Uchiha, daughter of their friends Fugaku and Mikoto Uchiha, is one of the best at the academy, tied with their daughter for the position of Kunoichi of the Year. So how was possible that their son, who had yet to have any special training, something that made both parents to feel more ashamed of themselves, defeated her like that? So, it was after looking at all of these facts that I decided that, in my opinion, your son is hiding his real abilities at the academy, revealed Orochimaru, surprising both Minato and Kushina once again. What? Why would he do that? Asked the reed-headed beauty, wondering why would her son fake his skills in the academy. After all, that was hardly the normal conduct a boy of his age would have. Meanwhile, Minato's thoughts were a little different. If what Orochimaru was saying is really true, then that meant that his son had been training, since there was no way that he could be strong enough to beat Sasuke without any source of training. But if that was true, then, who trained him? Sure, there was the possibility that he trained alone, but that was highly unlikely, which meant that someone had been helping his son with his ninja training. But the question was who? I can't tell you the exact reasons since I'm not him, but I'm going to guess that he just did not want anyone knowing his real strength, said Orochimaru before releasing a sigh, knowing that what he was going to say next was going to really upset them both. Considering the information that I have about Naruto-kun, I must say that right now I have no choice but consider him a flight risk, said Orochimaru. And almost as soon as he did, he was hit by two powerful killer instincts, courtesy of both Minato and Kushina, whose powerful glare was directed fully at the snake summoner. Are you implying that my son could become a traitor, Orochimaru? Asked Minato, his voice cold and his glare powerful. After all, there was no way he would ever let anyone say something like that to anyone from his family, never. You have to face the facts, Minato. First, he hides his true abilities in the academy. Abilities that we have no idea from where he got them, since I know you're also thinking that someone must have been teaching him for a while. But you and I have no idea of the who. Then it's the fact that your son has no bonds of importance with the exception of his relationship with Sasuke Uchiha, which probably started not so long ago. And then we can add the fact that, for what I can see, he does not even has a good relationship with his family. And you don't need to be an expert to notice that Naruto-kun holds no love for this village. Something that you two could have fixed if you paid enough attention. But you didn't, and for that I can easily tell you that your son has no true reasons for staying in this village, let alone protect it with his life. So yes, Minato, I do consider your son a flight risk, and after he graduates from the academy he could easily become a traitor to the leaf, said Orochimaru with steel on his voice. After all, he was not going to let this too intimidate him for simply stating a fact. Although it's not like this too could really intimidate Orochimaru at all. After all, the killing instinct paled in comparison to his. For a few minutes there was nothing but silence and a powerful battle of glares between the three Kage-level ninja, to the point in which you could easily cut the tension in the air even with a rusty kunai. Is this everything you came to say, Orochimaru? Asked Minato with a cold voice, getting nothing but a nod from the snake summoner, who stood up alongside the blonde Hokage. After all, he had already done his job here, so there was not really any reason for him to stay. Orochimaru, said Minato, now standing at the door of his house and seeing the head of the TI department leaving. But he still had some words to say before that. What is it, Minato? Asked Orochimaru with a raised brow, wondering what the fourth fire shadow wanted to say to him now. Just thank you for telling me all of this. I was just doing my job, but now it's your turn to fix this before something happens, said Orochimaru before simply leaving in a leaf shunshin no jutsu, body flicker technique. After all, he still had one more thing to do. Don't worry, I will, said the blonde Hokage, more than himself that to anyone just before entering the house and pondering everything that just happened. How could he have been such a lousy father? He remembered how it felt to grow without a family. He was an orphan after all, and it was only when his sensei and father figure started to train him that he actually felt true happiness. So he made a vow to himself that he would be the best father he could be to his children, to make sure that they could have the happiness that came with the family that Minato didn't have the first years of his life, but apparently he had failed somehow. Meanwhile, in the living room, Kushina was also pondering about everything that happened this night. At first she could not believe at all that she had really forgot about one of her sons like that, but the more she tried to remember anything about Naruto, the more she realized how bad of a mother she really was. Since the destruction of her clan, Kushina had always wanted a big family, and she had promised herself that she would do anything to bring joy to that family. But it looks like that was a promise she did not manage to fulfill. After all, what kind of mother neglects her son like that? The Uzumaki Namikaze matriarch was taken out of her thoughts by a gentle hand on her shoulder, and when she saw that it was her husband who had a sad face, she finally released everything she was holding and started to cry while hugging her husband as tight as she could, while Minato tried his best to comfort her. How did we forget about him, Minato-kun? Asked Kushina between sobs, fearing how bad the relationship with her firstborn child truly was. I don't know, Kushi-chan, I don't know, but we're going to fix this no matter what, said Minato, who felt her wife nod in his chest, her sobs becoming less loud. It was at that moment that both of them promised to themselves that, no matter how hard it might be, they will find a way to reconnect with their neglected son. That was the promise of a lifetime. Meanwhile, with Orochimaru, the powerful snake summoner appeared in his personal office, a little room that had nothing but a wooden desk with a chair, some bookcase filled with them, and it was illuminated by some torches. This place could be found in his secret lab that only he, the Hokage, and other few peoples like his teammates knew about. This was the place in which Orochimaru would normally do his experiments. Of course, he could not use any test subject for those experiments unless they were prisoners or any other person that the Hokage approved. And even that only happened once Orochimaru was more than sure that the procedure would not kill the patient. He would have to express his gratitude to his busted teammate one of these days. After all, she really helped in improving the surviving expectation of the patients. Orochimaru sat behind his desk, which had some papers on top of it, and started thinking about some stuff of the past. Yes, he could easily remember the times in which he would have easily just kidnapped some civilian or ninja and experiment on him. And if he was ever found out, he would just have left the village, After all, it's not like he had a lot of love for it either. But all of those thoughts and plans went out of the window the moment he met him. Even after all this years, the memory of the day he met that monster still made him shudder. And the only thing Orochimaru wanted more than his dream of learning all the secrets this world has was to never face that monster again. He was sure he would not survive a second time after all. The snake summoner attention went from the past to the new figure that had just appeared here in a Shunshin no Jutsu, body flicker technique, just like he had requested her. This person was wearing the usual ANBU uniform, but you could easily see that this individual was a woman. Just like any other ANBU on duty, she had a mask on her face, which looked like a snake, and you could easily see her hair behind her mark, which was black with a blue tint to it, and was styled in a short, spiky, fan ponytail. "You called sensei?" asked the female ANBU in a chirp tone, her hands on her hips, and Orochimaru could practically feel the smirk his apprentice had behind her mask. The snake summoner had to contain a sigh, knowing that, even though she was now an ANBU, his little apprentice would never change. He just wished she stopped getting on his nerves so much. "Yes, I have an important assignment for you, and it's important that you tell no one, not even the Hokage, about this, understood?" Orochimaru was never a man to leave anything to luck, so it was not a real surprise that he too wanted to deal with the mystery that was Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze. He didn't want it to do this because of the village or anything like that. No, he had more personal reasons than that. Enko. After all the few times Orochimaru had actually seen the boy in person, he was barely able to contain his shock and the shudder he got. After all, for each year it passed, somehow that boy's presence started to become more like his, something that only him detected, thanks to that life-changing meeting. Yes, it looks like the life of Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze was about to get more complicated, and there was nothing he could do about it. Meanwhile, in the training room, right now, if you were to look, you could find the man known as Zirif, sitting in the ground, his complete focus in no one but the passed-out form of his apprentice. Of course, the powerful dark mage had an idea of what his apprentice was facing, and he knew that this was probably one of the hardest things anyone could ever experience. After all, facing your own inner demons and accepting as part of you is something that almost no one could do. It was for that reason that so many mages in his world lost themselves when they started practicing any form of Yami no Meiho, darkness magic. Of course, there were those individuals that managed to control their own darkness, but by doing that they were just wasting the real power that this form of magic has. So if you were to ask Zirif what was the best way to become a master of Yami no Meiho, darkness magic, it would be this one. A part of him of course wondered if he had done this too soon, or if he had sent his only student into a death trap, but he easily erased those feelings. He had completely confidence in his student after all, and if there was someone that could face this challenge and come out winning, that someone was definitely his student. It was after a few more minutes of just staring at his apprentice that a strong presence swept over the entire place, and if Naruto had seen his sensei at that moment, he would have been definitely surprised. After all, his sensei's normal emotional face turned into a powerful glare as soon as he felt this presence. "What are you doing here, Alcor?" asked Zirif out of nowhere. His voice had a threatening tone that almost no one from this world has ever heard, and for just a moment you could have seen how his normal black eyes flashed red. "Is that the way to treat a friend, Zirif-kun?" asked a silky voice that seemed to echoes everywhere, but Zirif's attention went to one of the corners of the training room, from which a figure started to emerge from the shadows itself. This figure looked like a teenager, definitely male, probably between 17 and 18 years old of age. This person has curly white hair and a very pale complexion. His eyes were squinting, giving him a sleepy appearance, and he has white makeup/eyelashes around his eyes. He wears a red and black striped shirt with a frilled undershirt, along with matching shoes and black pants. "We are hardly that, Alcor. Now tell me, what did you came here to do?" asked Zirif, his powerful glare directed at the man called Alcor. Although this did not make the smile this man has lessen at all, actually it looked like it became wider. "You really wound me with that hostility of yours, but I guess I can't do anything about you attitude now, can I?" asked the white-haired man, ignoring Zirif's question with a smile on his face. "What does your master want this time, servant of the Shinigami?" asked Zirif, revealing Alcor's identity. But of course this didn't have any effects on said man, who simply started walking closer to Zirif, his smile still present on his face. "I believe the answer to that question is kind of obvious, don't you think?" said Alcor, while signaling Naruto's sleeping form with his eyes. But as soon as he did this he found a hand strangling his neck, courtesy of a red-eyed pissed Dark Lord, whose glare had become even worse. "If you ever put a finger on him, Alcor, I'll kill you," hissed Zirif, showing more emotions than ever since he had started training Naruto. After all, he had never trusted this man, just like he had never trusted this man's master. He had never felt any source of gratitude towards the Shinigami since he has brought him to this world, since he knew that the Shinigami had done it for his own reasons and not for the goodness of his heart, if he had any. So he would be damned if he even let any one of them get their claws on his apprentice, even if he had to fight a god himself. Even though Zirif was pressing Alcor's neck pretty tightly, the white-haired man kept smiling, just like if nothing was happening. Then, like by some art of magic, Alcor simply vanished from Zirif's grip and simply appeared behind him, a hand on his mouth since he was apparently trying to hold a chuckle. "I'm sure you will, Zirif-kun, but you don't have to worry about that. My master just told me to come here and take a look after all, told Alcor, his gaze still focused in the paced-out form of our blonde hero, while Zirif's glare was still directed at the white-haired servant of the Shinigami. I see that you used the gift my master gave to you, said Alcor after a few seconds, like if he was stating a fact. The mention of the Shinigami's gift made Zirif look at the back of his right hand, and just as he did this, a symbol appeared right there. This symbol was simply the kanji for death in a completely black color, and for anyone that looked at it would simply look like a tattoo or something. But of course Zirif knew better, since this was one of the 2 gifts the Shinigami gave him when he brought him to this world. One of those gifts was the mark he had on his right hand. Said mark had 2 purposes. The first one was to allow the Shinigami, and by extension Alcor, to know where he was at any given moment, since apparently the Shinigami wanted to make sure Zirif did not step over the line by doing anything he might consider problematic. The other function it had was something that Zirif actually liked. It kept his powers under control. This allowed Zirif to actually express what he feels without having the fear of killing everything around him, something that was a real problem back at his original world. The other gift was something a lot more different. It was the sword Zirif had used to send Naruto's conscience into the deepest part of his soul. Said sword allowed Zirif to do a number of things related to the souls of both the living and the dead ones, but it was something that the Dark Lord only used in some very specific circumstance. After all, he didn't want to use something that the Shinigami had given to him, and the condition to use its most powerful power was something that Zirif had only managed to fulfill twice in his lifetime in the elemental nations. That I did. And you're sure he was ready for that? Naruto-kun is still young after all. I have complete trust in my apprentice Alcor. I don't need you doubting that. I see, ended the white-haired man, looking at the sleeping Naruto with a lot of intensity, almost like he was the answer of a puzzle that he really needed to figure out. It was only after more seconds of intense staring, or glaring in Zirif's case, Alcor simply released a little chuckle before simply walking once again to one of the corners of the training room. When he reached that place, he just stared at Zirif again, meeting his harsh glare with a smile. I'm really excited to see how far Naruto-kun goes with someone like you teaching him. Zirif-kun, just make sure you don't fail him as a teacher. After all, he's one of the few interesting humans that exist. It would be a shame for him to not be able to face what's coming, said Zirif, ominous, just before simply disappearing, like if he was never there to begin with. The Dark Lord known as Zirif just released a sigh after hearing that, his eyes going back to his normal black ones and his gaze once again on his paced-out student. He wondered about why was someone like the Shinigami was so interested in Naruto, but in the end it did not really matter to him. After all, the matters of the gods were not his problem. But he was sure of something, that his apprentice would face a lot of hardships and trials, and just like he had told him the day they met, he would help him in any way he could, even if he had to face the Shinigami himself, or any other god. Yes, Zirif would show them exactly how much power the strongest dark mage of all times had if it meant helping Naruto in any way. After he was the closest thing he had to a family, and just like Mavis had said she would protect her family with her life, Zirif would do the same, even if the price was his very own soul. Raryu no Tekken, Lighting Dragon's Iron Fist, were the words that Naruto heard just before a red lighting-covered fist slammed directly into his face, courtesy of none other than Shadow Naruto, which sent him flying to the other side of the stadium. Naruto managed to skid to a halt after a few seconds, fast enough to look up and see how Shadow Naruto was dashing directly towards him, his hand covered once again in red lighting, only this time he had it in the form of a claw instead of a fist. Raryu no Saiga, Lighting Dragon's Crushing Fang, yelled Shadow Naruto just before sweeping his right arm just he finally reached Naruto. Luckily for the blonde, he managed to jump out of the way of the attack just before it hit him, since at the moment Shadow Naruto's attack touched the ground and made a big fissure over it thanks to the cutting properties of the spell. My turn, thought Naruto after increasing the space between him and his shadow. The young blonde started to build magic in his mouth for his attack, and by the looks of it Shadow Naruto had just the same idea. Raryu no Hoko, Lighting Dragon's Roar, yelled both Naruto and his shadow before releasing the powerful lighting spell, one blue and the other one red. Both attack met each other at the middle, creating a great explosion that made Naruto covers his eyes with his arm, which of course proved to be a mistake since the next thing he felt was a powerful lighting improved kick from Shadow Naruto that just like his fist sent the young blonde flying to the other side of the stadium. Damn it, thought Naruto, who was holding his stomach after standing up, a powerful glare in his eyes directed toward his shadow, who just stood there with a smirk on his face, thinking of how weak his good side was. I hope you step your game. This would not be fun if the only thing I do is handle you like a rag doll, said Shadow Naruto before once again dashing towards Naruto, this time with red electricity running through his foots. Raryu no Kajizum, Lighting Dragon's Claw, said Shadow Naruto before throwing a high kick aimed to Naruto's face. However, the young apprentice of Zirif managed to evade the attack by bending down just before the attack reached him. Naruto took the chance and filled his fist with blue lighting just before throwing his fist right at his shadow's face. Sadly for him, his true self moved his head fast enough to avoid the punch and grab his wrist just before slamming a powerful hook right at Naruto's ribs. The young apprentice of Zirif had no time to react though, since just after that a knee connected perfectly in his stomach, which made him arc over in both pain and lack of hair. But Shadow Naruto was not yet over though, so the next thing he felt was another hook, this time to his face courtesy of the hand Shadow Naruto used to grab his wrist, which he had released just a few moments ago. Naruto stumbled a little away from his shadow, feeling pain in all over his body, but he had faced worse when sparring with his sensei. So it was a determined Naruto that turned around and made a swinging motion in front of him that looked like an X with his arms who were covered in blue lighting. Raryu no Yakugeki, lighting dragon's wing attack! Yelled Naruto before releasing the energy in his arm after swinging them, sending a powerful X-shaped lighting of the size of his torso directly towards his shadow. Said shadow was not afraid of it though, since when he saw what his normal self was about to do, he too prepared his own attack by overcharging his fist with lighting before throwing a perfect jab in front of him, he too releasing the energy he had gathered. Raryu no Hoken, lighting dragon's breakdown fist, said Shadow Naruto before a human-sized fist made of red lighting appeared from his fist and collided with Naruto's spell. Sadly for said blonde, his shadow's spell proved to be stronger when the gigantic fist went past Naruto's attack and impacted his body directly, sending waves of pain to every part of the young blonde's body. Naruto could only scream in pain after receiving the powerful spell head-on and falling to the ground face first. Meanwhile, Shadow Naruto started to just walk towards the fallen blonde, a smirk in his face and confidence in his eyes besides the normal craziness they always had. You know, this would not be happening if you weren't such a and went to take revenge on those that wronged us, said Shadow Naruto like he was talking to a little boy. But no, you had to be the good guy here and do shit. Well, I'm tired of that. Don't we deserve to have our way with those bastards we are related to? Don't we deserve to release our fury upon the pathetic village of Konoha? I think we do, but since you lack the balls to do it, I'm going to have to do it myself. But don't worry, I promise you that all of them will suffer. After all, that's what we truly want, isn't it? Said Shadow Naruto in a matter-of-fact tone, looking down at his other self with his permanent smirks on his face. Shut up, that's not what I want. I'm not a monster like you, said Naruto while trying to stand up, giving a harsh glare toward his darkness. Although this just got a razor brow from him before he released a sigh. You know what? Forget it, I'm tired of trying to make you understand, so you can just die already, said the shadow with a sadistic smirk, his hand full of red electricity, and in the form of a claw. Raryu no Saiga, lighting dragon's crushing font, said Shadow Naruto, aiming the attack directly towards Naruto's neck. Shadow Naruto was sure he had won once the spell hit the mark. Of course the sound that he got after the attack was not what he expected. Puff. What? Yelled Shadow Naruto at seeing the log of wood that he just cut in half, result of Naruto's Kawarimi no Jutsu, body replacement technique. The shadow of Naruto had no time to even wonder where the log had even come from though, since he was barely able to turn around and catch the kunai his original self had just threw at him. Really? This is everything you have at this point? I have to say I'm actually disappointed in you, said Shadow Naruto with a deadpan, looking at his counterpart like he was an idiot, but for some reason this just got a smirk from Naruto himself. Shadow Naruto was about to ask what was so funny, but was stopped by a sound coming from the kunai at his hand, and when he actually looked at the kunai he could not stop the course to get to his mouth. Fuck me sideways, cursed Shadow Naruto before releasing his hold on the kunai, but it was already too late since as soon as he did the paper bomb Naruto had putted there, exploded, lifting a lot of smoke and of course hurting Shadow Naruto. You little fucker! That's it! You're dead. As soon as I get my hands on you I'm going to rip you apart, yelled an angered Shadow Naruto who was recovering from the explosion. His body and clothes had some burns here and there, but for someone like him it would take a lot more to really injure him, let alone kill him. Shadow Naruto was surprised to say at least when, from the smoke cloud that the explosion lifted, at least a dozen of shuriken came flying towards him, and even though he actually managed to deflect them by using his own kunais, he was not able to avoid the powerful spear-like blue lightning that hit him straight in his chest, releasing an explosion of electricity that actually made Shadow Naruto curse after being blasted away by the attack that he recognized as the Raryu Hotenjiki, lighting dragon's heavenward halberd, one of Naruto's strongest spells. Naruto was not yet over though, since he moved at an impressive speed towards Shadow Naruto, but if you paid enough attention you could see that there was something wrong with this Naruto. But Shadow Naruto was at this point too enraged to even notice, so he met Naruto halfway with a powerful fist directed to his face. But he was once again surprised when instead of hitting him the attack actually went past him. A clone, thought Shadow Naruto, but it was already too late since the real Naruto, who was hiding himself behind the clone, shortened the distance between him and his shadow and gave him a destructive uppercut, actually lifting him off the ground. But Naruto was not going to lose this opportunity though, so he jumped backward fast enough and threw another spell, hoping to end the fight with that. Raryu no Hoko, lighting dragon's roar. Used Naruto, the powerful lighting roar impacting Shadow Naruto while he was on the ground, creating another explosion. For a moment Naruto just stood there, looking at the cloud of smoke his attack had lifted while trying to regain his breath, but his widened in shock when he saw a black energy projectile coming from the smoke at a speed too fast for him to dodge. So when he tried, the attack went and pierced his shoulder completely, making Naruto growl in pain and try to stop the bleeding by putting his hand over his shoulder. Now I'm really pissed off. I was going to make this fast, but now I find myself wanting to just break you, hissed Shadow Naruto, who appeared after the cloud of smoke disappeared, looking worse to wear since not only were his clothes destroyed in some places, but he had blood running through his chest and mouth. The now enraged Shadow Naruto lifted his hand and pointed at Naruto just before multiple black magic circles appeared around him, each one the size of his head. Kuruwa Yajirushi, Kansu, dark arrows, piercing, was the thing Shadow Naruto said before. Each circle releases the same kind of black projectiles, each of the size of a kunai, directly towards Naruto. Said blonde was stunned for a moment at the obvious display of Yami no Meiho, darkness magic, but he managed to get out of it fast enough to start dodging the arrows that Shadow Naruto had summoned. However, even though he managed to evade a lot of the projectiles, he was not ready for when Shadow Naruto made a few of them divide itself at mid-flight, creating 2 for each arrow and changing their trajectory, making Naruto unable to dodge them on time. Gah! Screamed Naruto in pain after a number of those arrows pierced right through his shoulders, legs, arms and thighs. The young blonde ended up falling on his knees from the pain, his vision getting a little blurry because of the blood he lost of each of his wounds. While in his knees, the blonde looked up, and just like he feared, Shadow Naruto was already upon him, rage on his face instead of his normal smirk. "This is your loss, but now I'll enjoy this as much as I can," said Shadow Naruto before starting to kick the down blonde, who was now face first in the ground, whose conscience fading away with every hit. "I'm going to die here. Without accomplishing anything? Am I really this weak?" were the thoughts running through Naruto's mind, who could not believe he was going to die at the hands of this imposter. At the thought of him being an imposter, another memory appeared on his mind, this one of the word his sensei had told him before sending him here. How some people denied their darkness while others let their own darkness to control them, and that if he wanted to be strong he would have to accept that part of him. Naruto shook his head mentally though. After all, there was no way he would ever believe that someone like this guy was a part of him. He was no monster, and he would never just kill for pleasure of something like that. Other memory appeared in Naruto's head, but this time of his look-alike. "I promise you that all of them will suffer. After all, that's what we truly want. Isn't it?" Of course, if you were to ask Naruto, he would tell you that he didn't want revenge on his biological family, that he didn't care about them at all, not even to take revenge. But Naruto knew the truth, that no matter how hard he tried to deny it, there was always going to be a part of him that wanted to just hurt them, make them feel pain just like they made him feel for so many years. And it was only thanks to his father figure that he didn't become a revenge-motivated maniac like his shadow. Naruto had an epiphany at that moment. This guy that called himself his shadow is what he could have become if it wasn't for Zeref, someone that let hate to rule his life. And the more Naruto saw him through the fight, he could see that, just like him, he felt betrayed by his biological family in every possible way. But while Naruto had Zeref, this guy had no one just like him for the first 7 years of his life. "This guy, he's just like me, isn't he?" "No, I have been denying it since he told me, but that was just me not wanting to accept my darkest emotions, not wanting to accept that I have someone like him inside of me. But in the end that doesn't matter, he's really me, isn't he?" thought Naruto, looking up at his shadow, who had stopped kicking him a few seconds ago and was now huffing a lot. However, it looked like Shadow Naruto had not registered Naruto's change in mentality since he was getting ready to go for the kill. "Rarya no Saiga, lighting dragons crushing fawn," hissed Shadow Naruto before throwing the powerful claw-like attack towards Naruto's neck once again. "No! I won't lose! I must give it form with my magic and a purpose with my mind," thought Naruto just before the attack reached him, remembering his sensei's words about how Yami no Meiho, darkness magic, worked. And fortunately or unfortunately, you saw it from Shadow Naruto's perspective. His magic and darkness answered his mental call, and from the ground where his hand was a completely black chain appeared and stopped Shadow Naruto's attack by tidying itself to his arm. "What? But how did you?" Whatever word Shadow Naruto was going to say died in his throat when he saw Naruto, who was now on his back, holding in his hand what looked like a completely black sphere of the size of his palm. You could practically feel the power the spell had, and Shadow Naruto knew that from this distance, that spell could easily be fatal. Naruto used all the power he still had to move just before throwing the powerful mass of magic directly towards his shadow, who was either too stunned or simply could not move because of the chain. But in the end the reason did not matter, since the black sphere hit him square in the chest, creating another explosion and making Shadow Naruto release a scream of agony. Naruto used all the strength he could muster to stand up and start walking toward the now fallen form of his shadow, who now had a fist-sized hole in his chest, which would have easily killed any other person. But Naruto could already see that his shadow was alive. But he didn't have much time if the way his eyes lost out bright indicated something. "How could you use that magic?" asked Shadow Naruto between coughs of blood, wanting to know how his weaker self managed to do something that was impossible just the day before. "I accepted it. What you said, it's true. There is a part of me that wants to see them suffer, but I won't let that control me. You might be me, but I won't become like you know. I won't let their neglect to turn me into a monster. I am stronger than that. And you know it," said Naruto with as much fire he could put in his voice. And he was a little surprised when this actually made Shadow Naruto chuckle a little bit, although he could easily see that his shadow was in real pain. "I guess I underestimated you, didn't I?" admitted Shadow Naruto with a painfully smile just before his body was covered in a golden aura. But that was not the only thing that happened, since Shadow Naruto's body started to actually fade away. "You better get strong next time. I won't hold back at all," were the last words Shadow Naruto said just before disappearing, his body turning into dozens of golden lights that floated into the sky. Naruto saw all of this with a sad smile, vowing to himself that he would get as strong as he could now that he had passed this hellish test. The young blonde was already at his limit though, so it was not surprise when he collapsed face first in the ground, His eyes closed and his body wounded everywhere, but he still had a real smile on his face. He had won the fight after all. What if Neglected Naruto snaps during the chunin exams? And thanks for watching my video till the end. If you enjoyed this content, then do consider subscribing to my channel, and leave a like if you guys need the next part. Comment down, and thanks for watching the video, and see you guys in the next video.